Gentlemen, I think we will start. We will respect those who came, and we will not wait for those who don't come. But I hope that the others will join later on. It's really a very delightful moment to open this, the very first conference on legal technologies in Lithuania. And I hope that it will be an inspiring one, and we will have more of this type of events in the future. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Lyra Jakulevičienė, representing Faculty of Law of Mykolas Romeris University. And that's it what I need to say at this moment, because first of all, I would like to invite the Mayor of Vilnius, Mr. Remigijus Šimašius, to open our conference.
Thank you, Lyra. Welcome everyone to our municipality building, and welcome to Vilnius as well. For me, it's of course a great pleasure to open this LegalTech initiative. And speaking about technology, Vilnius is the right place to develop new technologies in all areas, because when you're looking for locations for new and interesting and nice and forward-looking places, the first ingredient, which is the most important, and I observe it from the talk with different investors, is: do you have enough talent here? That's the first thing. And I will come to this back a little bit later, but the very key issue for the success of the city is whether talents are choosing the place. Because the days where investment was the main thing to attract was already over. Today, investment follows the talent, and if the city is able to attract talent, then investment will come. And in case of Vilnius, it's very clear that people do love living in Vilnius. I mean, we are making our own surveys. European Commission is making its own surveys. According to European Commission survey, Vilnius is the capital, European Union capital, where citizens are the most happy living in this particular city. 98% of people are on this positive side living in this particular city. It's very clear that Vilnius has all the ingredients of being a city of attracting talents, because it's historic, it's green, it's comfortable. If you have at least medium income, you may afford many things here. So of course it attracts talents when we see the development of different companies here. So it's very obvious that when somebody is sent to abroad, people are not always very happy, but when people are sent to Vilnius, people are usually happy living here. Companies that like to have board meetings and spend one extra day here in the city, it's very important for the city. And again, when looking to the modernity issue, to the new innovation issue, again, the goal of municipality, my goal, is to make the city faster than any other city and more open than other city. I think it's a crucial issue because we, unfortunately, are not richer than some cities in the world. We are not able to compete with money with Abu Dhabi, for example. But we may become faster and more open. And it's very often has a direct relation to the legal environment. And again, maybe somebody already knows you because I do repeat it quite often. But when Uber company, which has big problems in many cities, is coming to Vilnius, so out of the 700 or more or less this number of cities where they do operate, so they started operations in Vilnius in the fastest manner so far. The second fastest city in the world is we are twice as fast as the second fastest city in the world. And speak about other innovations or whatever things, whatever regulations, we are very open to creative disruption because we have young and talented people. They are looking to have the city better tomorrow than it was yesterday. People are not satisfied with the status quo, even though they think that the station is good. So it's a crucial ingredient for having innovative environment. Speaking about legal tech, for myself, being a lawyer and being a lawyer who actually did PhD in something in relations to not to tech but to legal innovation, is again some additional issues I want to say. I do believe personally that the law is not just creation of the government which has to be imposed on people. Law is a creation of people in order to solve conflicts between them, or to avoid conflicts. And when we see the process of development of the law through centuries, it is very clear that it's an ongoing process of innovation. And this innovation is not like put on people from above, typically, but it's created somewhere, and then spreads to other areas. So I do believe in legal innovation. I do believe that some new things may be born in a particular place and then spreads over the world. And I do believe today, coming back to Vilnius, that Vilnius could be one of the places or very good place to have this because of the same ingredient, talent. And again, when I was entering, when my father or people from my father and mother generations were entering university, they were typically not choosing law in Lithuania. They were choosing mathematics or physics or chemistry or biology or similar issues because law was dictated by a communist regime, and then it was not interesting. And I mean, lawyers were treated a little bit with suspicion because these were people who were more or less collaborating with Soviet regime. When I was entering university, it suddenly was a promising land. There was suddenly a promising area, and lots of talented people actually were rushing to social sciences, including law. Law for very long years was already the most prestigious and the most inviting profession. And looking to very cynically, practically, if we have overproduction of some education, sorry to the dean, but I think the law will be one of these areas where we have the highest density of the brightest minds who are desperately looking for new opportunities, what to do, what to create new. And when we speak about new companies or about new creations, so I think that we have this overproduction of lawyers and bright minds who are looking for new initiatives. That's exactly the law in this particular city. So I think this is clearly the ingredient to a great success in legal tech in general, and it's my great pleasure again to open this initiative, and I wish you all the success, and I'm very sure that you will experience a great success. So thank you again, have a good day, and have a good start of this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Immediately, as a dean, I have to react. Actually, I would like to have overproduction of lawyers. You see, there are not so many students today because generally we are actually missing people. So I would like to have more students, in fact, but unfortunately, times are different. So it's as announced in the program. Now I have a chance to say a few words, and I think today, even though we're not in full composition, but we are here today because I think there is some curiosity of how the legal practice, the legal profession will change because of legal technologies. And more importantly, how we all can benefit from those changes. So for me personally, legal tech is something that can bring access to justice, to legal services, which are increasingly more expensive, can bring easier access globally, not only in Lithuania. To others, it's a good business opportunity, for sure. What it will be for you, if you are not decided, I hope today you will have an opportunity to find it out. You may wonder why university here at municipality is doing the event like we have today. First of all, it's not a surprise that we're responsible for legal education, and we understand our responsibility as something which goes beyond the Lithuanian market. We understand our responsibility in the global context, because even though law is a very national thing, is a very conservative thing, where we have lots of barriers, where we have lots of borders among the countries, we still think nowadays we have to think in a global context. So therefore, legal tech at university, we see as the possibility to innovate studies. We want our graduates to be prepared for the market. And the market is rapidly changing because of technologies. So we see it as a possibility to innovate studies. We also see this as an opportunity to innovate research. Rather than just jumping in and creating lots of products, we know that there are lots of legal tech products all over the world. So we think there is a need for research, how to bring those products to certain markets. What are the risks that are created by technologies, not only the benefits. So the scientists, they can have a say in that to minimize those risks when businesses, for example, develop legal tech. Also, we see it as an opportunity for partnerships. Legal tech is unlikely happening without partnerships. The term itself is already a multidimensional term. At least it involves lawyers, specialists of informatics or technologies, IT specialists. So for us, it's an opportunity to partner. And this event is namely also with this purpose, to partner, to find partners, to discuss some common interests. And hopefully you will find some interests today. To implement all those wishes, so to say, that we have at university, we have established a legal tech department as an internal one. We hope this will help us also to innovate studies, to innovate research, and to expand our partnerships. This was done just this year. But indeed, legal tech is not new to Mykolas Romeris University. We have quite a long history of, in this field. And it goes back to something like 2002, when the first master program on law and informatics was established. And indeed, this program was very successful. Just to give you an example, the graduates of this program, 6 of them have defended doctoral dissertations afterwards. 4 of those dissertations have been defended outside Lithuania, abroad. And this also has encouraged us to develop the doctoral program. It's a partnership program between 6 universities in Europe, and our university is part of it. This program on law, science, and technologies has been running since 2012. And today we also have, I'm very happy to have Martinas, who is the graduate of this program. One of the success factors is that this program, which is also placed in other universities, including the University of Bologna in Italy, has been awarded as the best legal program of Bologna University. And those of you who know Italy well, you know that Bologna University is considered the top university for legal education in Italy. And many of those who defended dissertations in Lithuania and abroad, right now they are in leading positions, both in the private sector and government sector. So it is quite a long history. So you may wonder why, namely now, we do something in public and why we think that without partnerships, things won't happen. So before starting this event, we have been discussing quite a lot with our dear colleagues from Create Lithuania, with Virgilijus and Ramūnė. We have been discussing what you can expect from this event, what we can bring to this event. So first of all, I think it's the inspiration. Without inspiration, things are not happening so fast. And I hope that if we are all inspired by this topic, I think we are very different here, coming from the legal sector, coming from IT sector, from investment sector, from academia. We are very different, but if we are all inspired, we can do something together and something for the better. I think for sure what you can expect, and I'm very delighted to announce that you can expect world-class know-how that will be shared here. And I'm very grateful that our legal tech guru, I'm happy to say that, Dr. Daniel Martin Katz from the United States has kindly agreed to join us today. So I think you can expect a very hard, soft software here today. on this topic. We also hope that this will be an opportunity for all of us to discuss and participate in something very new. You all have an opportunity here to be creators and to participate in something which was called the initiative of establishing the Vilnius LegalTech Centre. Well, if it's going to be Vilnius, I think the mayor had very good arguments that he presented why Vilnius, but we may also discuss Vilnius plus Kaunas or Lithuania. This is something what we are going to discuss today, the modalities of establishing such a center, what interest we would have in this center. So I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to Vilnius municipality for hosting this event. I would like to thank very much my colleagues Virgilijus and Andramūnė from Create Lithuania program. I would like to thank the Baltic American Freedom Foundation and all the other partners who have made this event possible. So without further ado, I would like to invite Virgilijus Pajaujis, colleague from Kurk Lietuvai, Create Lithuania, for his opening remarks.
Thank you. I would like to start my opening word with a couple of names. Fuse and MDR Lab in London, Mills Oakley Accelerator in Melbourne, and the LegalTech Lab in Helsinki. These are just a couple of recent examples in a growing global trend of launching legal tech incubations. Such places are being created by law firms, law schools, corporates, and state bars. But what is missing among these names? Legal tech is becoming a global phenomenon, and we are aiming at joining the list. We as a country have high numbers of legal professionals and one of the largest number of law students in the EU. We do also lead when it comes to fulfilling business needs for IT sector. Recently, Hierarchis, which is a leading Dutch IT company, expanded to Lithuania. Owner André van der Dolen commented that Lithuania is quickly developing into one of the fintech and legal tech main hubs in Europe. Having taken into account mentioned factors, existing initiatives, and potential of Vilnius city, which was mentioned by the mayor, in collaboration with our partners, we decided to launch a project of Vilnius LegalTech Centre. We have already received interest from academic side, Vilnius city municipality, law firms, science and tech parks, and all of you who decided to dedicate your time for this conference. Vilnius LegalTech Centre should exactly be the place where different target groups would meet, and that would result in legal tech services, research, and products. We cannot have a better moment than at this conference to invite everyone, all of you, to actively participate in discussions and in creation in the future Vilnius LegalTech Centre, which we are actually creating right now at this very moment at this conference. Once again, it is my pleasure to invite all of you to be the part of global legal tech trend. And the next time, we will proudly hear a list starting with the name of Vilnius. Thank you.
Allow me to say a few words before turning to our keynote speaker. I say a few words about our program. Indeed, we will have the keynote presentation, and afterwards we will have coffee break. After coffee break, we will have two panels, expert panels, focused more on discussions. So one panel will be to give you an idea of what kind of problems legal tech products could solve. And the second panel will be focused namely on what Virgilius was mentioning, the possible establishment of legal tech centers. So I really encourage you to stay until the end, and I'm pretty sure you won't regret that you are inside rather than outside in this very nice weather that is going to change apparently next week, not to the best. So I'm pretty sure you won't regret. But right now, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker. And I won't be mistaken by saying that he is behind many important developments in the world. Professor Daniel Martin Katz is not just a lawyer, he's a scientist, he's a technologist. He is professor who applies innovative polytechnical approach to teaching law. This helps lawyers to meet today's biggest challenges, societal challenges. He has lots of awards. Probably it would be difficult to distinguish one or another one, but what I would like to say that Professor Katz is not just a scientist, not just coming to this field from theoretical perspective. He's also a practitioner. He's involved in developing LegalTech Products. So he is co-founder and chief strategy officer of Lex Predict, whom many of us know, a legal technology and analytics company. So I'm really very grateful, Daniel, that you have decided to join us, that you have agreed to join us. And I can only regret that the audience is not so full here, but there could be also one reason, which is technological, because we are recording this event. And usually the risk in that is that when you record it, people sometimes prefer to sit at their computers and to watch it. So your knowledge, your know-how won't be lost. It will be spread throughout at least to 2 or 3 million of persons in Lithuania, because it would be put on the Vilnius municipality website. So I'm very delighted to invite you for a keynote speech, and will not spend any more time here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me. It's my great pleasure to be here. I think I wanted to offer a series of remarks, kind of paint the picture as you go down this path towards the center and towards this and a kind of strategic roadmap for the city and for the country. This is today's presentation is called Make Law Better, and I'll see you on Twitter, #MakeLawBetter. And this is my opening statement, and I think it's really the most trivial of all observations, which is if you look in the world at all levels, no matter what market you're in, that law is not really working to serve people. And we heard those comments, from the mayor, and I think it's pretty obvious. We're not delivering the value commensurate with the cost that we impose, and that's true in every country in the world, and that's true globally, seen across countries. And so I think first thing you have to admit is you have a problem. If you're going to be better, you have to say, okay, we have these problems. We need to. That's easy to do, is to identify we have too many lawyers. They're not doing the right things. They have these creative minds, and then we sort of don't leverage them to the maximum extent possible. But I think there's a lot of reasons for the challenges we face. But if you had to boil it all down to one basic proposition, one simple explanation, this is the explanation. This is a field that has subjected itself to thinking that subject matter expertise is the only thing that matters. And that's the problem is that if you look at other fields of human endeavor, operational excellence together with subject matter expertise are necessary to come together. We spend almost no time training our students to deliver operational excellence. We spend a lot of time developing subject matter expertise, and that's kind of that's the challenge that we need to solve. So tech sort of exposes those propositions in a very direct way, but it's really this basic proposition that operational excellence rather than subject matter expertise. That's minimum subject matter expertise. You have to have that, but you need something beyond that, I think, in the world that we're moving into. So this isn't about the content of any particular legal rule. That's the other conferences you can go to about law. That's all they do. This is about actually looking at law as a phenomenon and trying to say, how can we make it better? And that'll take you into technology and into engineering, into other fields where people have come up with methodologies to either improve processes or to automate certain types of processes in order to lower the cost and make them more effective. So I would just say that those are the challenges, but despite the challenges, it's not all negative. It's actually very positive. We see around the world these green shoots are coming up through the snow, and there's just a growing community globally that's working to advance what you might call the legal innovation agenda. And the agenda has lots of elements, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this one event in particular that happened just a few weeks ago, maybe 7 weeks ago, which is the Global Legal Hackathon. 22 countries, 40 cities, 600 hackathon teams, about 5,000 people working all over the world on trying to make improvements on particular propositions that were relevant to their jurisdictions and some that were relevant everywhere. And I think, you couldn't have probably gotten 500 people together not all that long ago, and the fact that we have 5,000. The next time they do this, they'll probably have 10,000. Just like the next time I come back here, this room will be completely full. That's how this always is. The first one's through, the first one, it always starts small and then these things grow. They've had other hackathons. This was a sort of watershed, so I just wanted to say it. So I think it shows that lawyers are lawyers. Lawyers are lawyers. It's the same animal everywhere in the world. You would recognize a lawyer anywhere in the world. Yeah, the laws are different. Yeah, the jurisdiction has different, but it's a very particular animal, and you can spot them. If you're in Asia or the United States or here, it's a very particular personality type in a very particular sort of way. So I think there's more that unifies us as lawyers than divides us. So I would just say, so here's the legal innovation agenda, if you might say. One thing I just want to make the point of, when we talk about innovation in legal, this is what you see in the media, is robots. It just cannot help but to write. There's a story every minute about robot lawyers. Robots, first of all, there will not be a robot. There's no reason to have a robot. It's going to be in the cloud anyway. But the notion they're going to come into your office and see like a physical robot is a kind of silly idea. But there's literally an article a day, it seems like, on the idea of a robot lawyer. So I'd like to try to not talk about that exactly, but just take judicial notice of the fact that I could put up 100 of these articles and not run out. I can just keep hitting the down arrow. This might be the peak, but you never know if you're at the peak until after the peak. But robot lawyers. So there's a lot more to this innovation conversation than robot lawyers. It's so I want to distinguish real quickly. Legal innovation is a broader. Legal tech is a subset of that. So process improvement, which I won't talk about today too much, is another aspect. So Lean and Six Sigma applied to law, which is a process improvement methodology that is used in engineering. So if you broke down legal innovation, you could at least put it into these 5 buckets, but they're more like process improvement. Here's 5 vectors of legal innovation: market structure and dynamics, productization and scale, AI and legal analytics, monetization, and then kind of human capital and culture. And I have, by the way, if this entire deck is online, Google Make Law Better, you can find it. So if you miss anything, you can look later, no problem, online. You can download it actually for free, so it's all yours. So market structure, I'll start with that today. There's no obviously market, but per se, there's a bunch of sub-markets and they have different dynamics, and this ought to be acknowledged. So my friend Bill Henderson sort of says, there's the legal profession, there's the legal services industry, and then there's the legal industry. And the legal profession is what lawyers typically think the industry is, which is the lawyer part of the legal industry. But then there's all this other stuff, like all these legal tech companies, they're not lawyers per se, but they're involved in this industry more broadly. So some of what is that the legal profession is not really growing in terms of market share. It's that other things are taking over pieces of it. And so, and then you can sort of break things out by who's the client and what are they giving you. And then the dynamics are different. So A to J is access to justice, but you could say, well, who's the client? Fortune 1000 company, mid-sized company, retail, or access to justice? And then what's the nature of the offering? Is it purely services? Is it some mixture of services and products, or is it just products, pure products? So you could drill into each of those and spend lots of time, and there's been lots of writing about each of those different subsectors. But just to sort of say, that's the tapestry here. And I think if you look everywhere in the world, the incumbents are under attack from every direction. And that's okay, It was stated by the mayor that we're here for creative destruction, so let's have at it, as far as I'm concerned. So there's no disruptor, but a bunch of these trends are kind of coming together. So I want to take my time today to try to show you some of those trends and how they play out. So obviously law firms compete against other law firms. That's the obvious part. But the less obvious part are all the other players that are moving into the space that really fill in this and give you a more complete. This is not, I mean, law firms tend to look at other immediate law firms as their competitors. So here's at least four competitors that law firms face. The big four: legal process outsourcing, legal tech itself, and then the clients. The clients can do a lot of this work by themselves. Companies can just do the work themselves. They don't need a law firm. So just to kind of make the point, it ought to be said, the sum of the 10 largest law firms on earth are smaller than Deloitte. This is an article in The Economist about this, but when you think about scale, I mean, we say a law firm is nothing. The biggest one is nothing by comparison to these other entities. So in terms of scale, just keep that in mind. So when you're those large entities, you look to other places and you say, where's a market that I can get into? Because I have 220,000 people that I have to support, and I'm under intense competition with the other big four. Maybe I can slide into this legal area. And so big four is sort of moving into these areas that are kind of on the boundary of law in different places around the world. And they're making partnerships with some of the legal tech providers like Deloitte and Kira. Kira does contract analytics. And so that's one dynamic that you ought to think about and understand, is that, again, the incumbents are under attack from every direction. And even in the US, which was a place that they couldn't really get a lot of a foothold, now they're opening shop in one market in DC where the rules will allow it. LPOs, so outsourcing, outsourcing historically is labor arbitrage. One area is cheaper than another area, and you can get people with the same skills but a much lower price point. That's where it starts, but then LPOs have become tech companies also, so that's sort of turning over. But there's a bunch of investment going into these LPOs, legal process outsourcing. This is just some of them. This is one of the companies called Elevate. They're one of the fastest growing companies by Inc. magazine, but they're coming in and taking chunks of this legal work away from law firms, basically, and working. This is another one called Riverview. They're in the UK, but it's federating into other places. And DLA Piper owns part of that law firm. So they've hedged their own bets. I think it's a very rational thing. If you think that you're losing market share, then invest in the thing that's eating you up, and then you have both sides of the bet. So they start as outsourcers, then they get into tech. Because what happens is otherwise you're just playing this margin game, and eventually everybody has outsourcing, so then you need tech and outsourcing. That's just the arc of these things. In every sector, this is what always happens. So here's another one that's local to me. This is the largest one by far, Axiom. They have the revenue of a Global 100 law firm, but they're basically an outsourcer. They're up to 2,000 employees, so that would put them already in the top maybe 30 law firms in the world. To be at 2,000 law people, they'll be at 4,000 pretty fast here. So this is going really quickly. What they do is they go to the corporates and they basically say, we'll just do this whole chunk of work for you. And General Electric, for example, gave about 30% of their work to like one of these LPOs called United Lex, which I don't have in here, but there's many others. So. Legal tech is another competitor, or you could think of this as Lex Law.Startup. We've seen huge growth in the number of these startups globally. And there's a bunch of lists out there that you might want to look at just for your consideration. Angel List is a list of venture-backed startups that you can look at. If you look under legal, there are 1,800 there. If you look under legal tech, there's 750. Not every list is completely comprehensive. I would estimate that we have globally about 1,200 to 1,500 legal tech companies. Maybe 10 years ago, there'd be 1 to 200. So we've had huge growth in this. Stanford has a list. The lists have different people. They share some elements in common, but the lists are not. So if you took the superset of that, you'd get a much larger number. And then this guy, Bob Ambrosi, who's does a reporter in the United States, has a list also, and I think his is the best because my company's on his list and not the other two, for example. So this is ground truth as far as I'm concerned. On the continent, I just to give you a taste for it, here's just two maps. How they do these maps in startups. They say, well, here these are just for Germany and France, and you couldn't even filled out one cell here on all that long ago. So Germany, France. I mean, they haven't made maps for every place, but again. every place you sort of see this. You get a couple, then you get more, then you get more, and people sort of get the word, and then everybody has a startup, and then it turns into Silicon Valley all of a sudden, where if you don't have 3 startups, it's sort of an embarrassment. So legal's a relatively small sector of the economy, but we have had waves of venture funding and even exits. So here's a few examples. Judicata raised a total of $7.8 million. Peter Thiel, who's a famous Silicon Valley investor, founder of PayPal, has invested in them. These guys have gotten, they're up to a little over $12 million, almost $13 million, I guess now. They're up to $20 million. Peter Thiel's also in this one, $10 million. Then there's smaller ones, like this is more in the access space. So helping people navigate the court system. So this Court Buddy, this guy founded another company called Justin TV, and then he decided to go into this. So he's already had a very successful exit. Clio did 27 million total. They're probably one of the largest ones. They do e-discovery, and they're up to 125 million. So we've also had failed companies, but again, people like to say, oh, well, there was a failure, so what? It's startups, this is what happens. Companies fail, that's not a big deal, that's how it is. It's a risky endeavor, so it's not much of anything. We've had some real notable exits though, too. So what's happened is some of the bigger providers have bought up some of the others. So LexisNexis has gone and bought up some of these companies. So these two in particular, Lex Machina and Ravel, were bought by LexisNexis. Thomson Reuters bought this Indian outsourcing company called Pangea 3. So they had, that was backed by Sequoia, which is a very posh venture capital organization in Silicon Valley. This is another merger. This is a document management company mixed with an AI company now. So a bunch of these providers who already have something going want to buy an AI company to put with what they're doing. The outsourcers want to do this too because they need, at some point you run out of that outsourcing piece and then you need to put tech into the picture. So I won't go through all of these, but the point is there's a lot of activity in this space. And this is where most of the research and development from an industrial standpoint is happening in the industry. It's not happening in the academy, and it's not happening in law firms. It's happening in venture-backed startups. That's where the R&D is being done, commercial R&D. I'm not saying other people, I do research too, but some of it's looks like real R&D, and some of it's like academic articles that no one reads, right? This is the R&D part. So I think there's plenty to play for. This has really just gotten going in a deeper sense. This is gonna have different waves over time. So the last thing I would point you to is the clients themselves. Every client faces this decision. Do I do it myself or do I buy it from somebody? Historically, people bought their services from law firms, and that was the end of it. But the firms themselves, the client can say, well, why am I paying you to do that when I can do this myself? And this is one of the groups that's out there where large companies have gotten together and they basically said, we can sort of sort this out, not every aspect of what we would send to a law firm, but we can take bigger and bigger chunks and just do it ourselves. So I gave a speech 2016 at this event. There were 450 people at the event. This is what I said. Next time I come, they'll be like, the room will be totally packed. Next year they did it, 1,200 people. They filled, that's the ballroom of the Bellagio in Las Vegas, and they completely packed. Now, they just did it again at the Bellagio, and they didn't have enough room to even get everybody all in one room. So it's 2,200 people the last time. This is just the last month. So this is yours truly up there on the panel talking about AI. But so legal operations is the title, and so these larger corporations have a person who basically run operations is a classic thing in companies, but legal usually didn't have a role like this, and so now you're seeing people bringing operations discipline to the delivery of legal services. And so just to kind of, that's one of the things you ought to know about, I think. So now in Europe, so goes the world. Also in Australia, APAC, there's an APAC branch of it, so it's just kind of getting going globally. So we think about products, again, this has been a services industry forever. Now it's becoming a products business. So again, if you think you're a subject matter expert and the only way to deliver it is through you, you're wrong. History has already shown that it's not a proper statement. You may not have not seen that, but that's what's going on. So let's talk about this over here. So again, we know the service delivery by lawyers. That's the obvious part. The question is, what about product service bundles or just pure products? So again, you can go through this on your own, but if you look, everybody is trying to move into somebody else's square. That's usually how this goes. So if you're an outsourcer and you're selling labor, then what you try to do is bundle that with a product, and you know, everybody's trying to get into everybody else's square because you got to grow your market share. Once you carve up your own space, you try to look for other places to go on the map. So you could think of this as the productization of legal knowledge or legal understanding. And that's what the Big Four do best. And that's why it's so threatening. What do? Build software, put it in you, and sell services all around that software. That's the classic maneuver from the Big Four. And that's why I think the other thing that products allow you to do is do work on just in time, quickly. You can quickly do the work because you can't scale up 5,000 people that fast, but you can scale up an Amazon instance in 1 minute. So this is why products have a certain attractiveness to them. And products allow you to also sell services. So that's why it's a better business. And when you have a product in somebody, you can't get rid of them that easily. It's very hard to unwind your accountant. It's much easier to switch your lawyer. If you think about selling your business, products have a much higher multiple. If you went to a VC or if you went to private equity and sold your company, they'd say, oh, you're a product company, you're getting a multiple of like 5. If you're a services company, you're getting a multiple of like 2. And so it's just much better business. Recurring revenue is my favorite phrase in the world. That's what everybody wants, recurring revenue. You get paid all the time. So why don't we see more scalable technology offerings? That's the question, created by law firms. Tech is a capital-intensive field. You got to understand. So most jurisdictions, law firms cannot raise capital in a proper sense because they can't share the money with other people. And so that's why you've seen most of the work done outside of firms. Firms are the logical place to start. I think that's kind of the original sin of this profession. We've told ourselves a story that we're lawyers and we're different and we can't subject ourselves to this, but this has actually been this is going to be our undoing in a much deeper way because we could have been the ones doing the innovation. Now it's being done largely by others. So firms have no assets and cash accounting. That's a formula to have no scale, basically. What's the asset? The lease on the building? Maybe they own the building. There's no IP, there's nothing. They have no assets and they have cash accounting. It's the worst formula for scale. So that's why you've seen real challenges from a business standpoint. So those are all headwinds, but notwithstanding, and it was mentioned, I think, by the speaker just a few minutes ago, we're seeing some law firms try to overcome this with R&D operations. So here's the race is on to try to build a product business within a service business. So you see a bunch of these large law firms creating innovation centers or incubations for startups, a bunch of different firms that were mentioned, Baker McKenzie, Littler, or you could just actually run a proper capital-funded R&D operation. So I'm involved with this one for Denton's, but there are many others like this, where they actually invest in legal tech companies. They try to incubate them. They try to roll their products into their services. So that's another model that people have had. This was mentioned as one of them. There's many of them is the point. This was the first one, but now, people copy the ideas and then they extend them in various sorts of ways. So there's real scalability challenges here, and that ought to be acknowledged. So let's talk a little bit about AI, since this is what everybody loves to talk about in terms of automation. This is what I'm often called to talk about because this is my area of subject matter expertise, is artificial intelligence applied to law. I could do a full-fledged presentation. You can look at it here if you're interested. But I'll just give you the highlights, which is these are kind of the 3 buckets of things that are most logically applied to what lawyers do: expert systems and machine learning, natural language processing. You can do other things under the family of AI, there's all this other stuff, but I think these 2 are the ones that are most logically applied to what lawyers do. So on the one side, data-driven AI, you should think machine learning and NLP, and rules-based AI, you should think expert systems. So with respect to expert systems, the first expert system in law was built by Richard Susskind. The first one I'm aware of was built by Richard Susskind in the middle of the 1980s, and it was meant to walk through. You can see the user interface, the green screen there. It's designed to take the process that a lawyer follows and walk them through. So this has involved a particular statute in the UK, which isn't important for our purposes, but the idea is that the lawyer would ask you certain questions, and based on the questions you answer, would try to walk you to an end state, which would be what you ought to do. So there's some more contemporary examples I'll show you. The idea is that you're trying to encode the rules that people follow into software. But you should just think, if something, then something. If this, then this. If this, then this. This is tax preparation software is probably the most commercially successful version of expert systems. So this would be one example that has 30 million users. This is a company that does this called Logic, and they're building these legal expert systems. These are the processes people have in their mind, and you're trying to get them out of people's mind and turn them into software. And we have this one that my school has helped develop that's used in the access to justice space to help poor people navigate the legal system. So even you can build these applications without knowing how to code. That's the key, because most lawyers can't write a line of code if their life depended on it. Expert systems will become chatbots. Chatbot is really the modern representation of an expert system with a better user experience. But the part I spend most of my time is on data-driven artificial intelligence, predicting things using models and methods. It's really hard to code rules fully for a system and have it be closed. And that's what expert systems have largely been a failure from an AI perspective. Not exclusively, again, I showed you examples where it has, but from a technical perspective, it's very hard to encode all the rules in a process. So if you wanted to build a driverless car, you can't write down all the rules of driving and do that very successfully. You need to watch a lot of people drive cars and learn the rules of driving. So you start from the data and learn the rules rather than encode the rules. It's very hard to do. So these are the two subfields that are most relevant to predicting things: machine learning and natural language processing. And the goal is to try to predict some class of legal outcomes using a model or a method. And so here's a few examples of places where lawyers are trying to predict things. So in e-discovery or e-disclosure, as it's called some places, where you're trying to review large amounts of documents, or in due diligence, where you're trying to buy or sell a company. This is finding the relevant documents and characterizing them. That's a model or method can do that. Predicting contract terms and linking those to outcomes. So people modify contracts back and forth under the notion they're lowering the risk. But the question is that really true? Or how much is the risk? Can you quantify the risk? Compliance, people are looking for bad behavior that people are almost certainly doing in a large organization. There's somebody doing something they shouldn't. Can you find it and stop it? In litigation, people are trying to predict case outcomes and costs. How much is this going to cost and when is it going to settle? And then in lobbying, which is another thing lawyers sometimes are called upon to do, people are trying to build strategies to work with regulators to get the outcome that they want. And so can you do that with a model or method is the idea. So I think in many instances, you'll find that blending models and methods together, thank you, is better than one particular model or method alone. This is what you might call the pseudocode of our times. Humans working together with machines beat human or machines for any non-trivial problem. So our problem is this is all human experts. This is largely a field dominated by all human experts. That is not going to be sustainable. It already is falling apart everywhere in the world. So the goal is to try to actually get the best of both worlds. If you could, the real secret sauce, we did a set of technical papers, but the idea is you want to blend experts, crowds, and algorithms together. That's what you see. So if you think about crypto, I mean, that's really, we're bringing crowds to bear on particular problems and automating and trying to crowdsource trust in that context. But across every problem, we want to try to get away from the cult of the single expert. So let me just say a few things about the state of AI in the law. We need more peer-reviewed validation studies. This is the place for the academy. So we have a lot of marketing material out there about these companies, but we don't have a lot what you would see in medicine, like a medical like a random control trial that you'd see in medicine or something like that. We need the analog for that for legal. And there are a number of academic papers of serious technical quality. I'll just point you to a few. It's PLOS One. one other thing you ought to know is that the economics of AI and legal AI are changing really quickly. So we're having a mixture of machine learning as a service and enterprise open source coming together. And that's making the cost of doing a lot of this automation are coming down very rapidly. So here's what we're getting in the broader menu. We're getting more standardization, and I work this out further here, machine learning as a service and what it means for the future of legal analytics. But you know, there's a lot of fetishization of Watson. I mean, I've even fallen a little bit prey to this, but let me just say that that's not even close to the only game in town. They broke through with a business model of machine learning as a service, but there are other smart people out there besides IBM. So other companies said, well, we can do that too, like Azure from Microsoft. And Google said, oh, we have TensorFlow, and we have something that's akin to what they have. And then IBM has their thing. And Amazon says, oh, we do machine learning also, and we can turn it into a drag and drop operation when you don't necessarily need to even know how to program. I think we're going to go the way of the world and see more open source offerings in legal. And we really need it. Because a lot of these problems, you know, like legal problems, it's not enough to say, well, the machine told me to do this. We need explanation. We need a way to characterize what has been done. And so if you can't even see the model or method and explain it, and it's all a black box, again, don't fall into the trap that every algorithm's a black box. Some are more black box than others. Humans are the ultimate black box, by the way. I have no idea what's going on in your mind. When you can come up with an explanation ex post, but I really don't know what's going on. Just our company's practicing what we preach. We've open sourced a bunch of our technology and made it available. We want to be the Red Hat of legal. Contract Suite is a contract analytics or document analytics offering. You can go to GitHub right now and download the entire thing if you want to and play around with it. There's a Docker install. That's helpful to you. The other thing I'd say on this front is let's listen to the clients. Here's what they say. Data is the future of our business. Data is the future of our business. The legal part of the business. Data, this is the general counsel of one of the largest insurance companies in America. Data is our future. So don't take my word for it. So when you think about monetization, I think the challenge we've had in legal innovation is you got to pick problems that can scale and that are rational from a business standpoint. And this is our challenge in law. Pedigree typically beats performance in law. That's the challenge of the bit as a business. In other words, we can't really measure the quality of what people do. So what we do is we fall back on pedigree because we can't actually objectively measure performance. And I think that's a real goal, is to try to knock that down and get performance is not rigorously measured. Every time we benchmark experts in this field, it's not nearly as good as we think. I can work that out if people want to afterwards. So this is the challenge. Even if you have something that's better, you have to demonstrate that it's better, demonstrably. Otherwise, pedigree wins again. So even if you're 5 or 10% better, you need to find a customer who actually cares and who actually cares about 5% increases or decreases. So I think it's easier sometimes to sell legal innovation ideas outside of law. And I think we were talking a little bit about this. I mean, legal tech and fintech, they're like the same thing in a lot of ways. There's a lot of overlap between those ideas. Reg tech is insurance tech. Those things are they're almost like the same thing at the margins. So if you look across the entire economy, the boundaries between sectors are kind of falling apart. So here's what you might say. Legal tech is the intersection of finance, technology, and law. If you can put an offering right in the middle of those three, it's the most likely to succeed. Like if I'm evaluating a company for venture investment or what have you, if you can put yourself right squarely between those three, that sounds good to me. That means you're right in this spot where there's a lot of action, because on the margins there isn't a lot of difference between lawyers and financiers when it comes to managing risk. They're different ways. In other words, I'm saying this. Legal tech, reg tech, fintech, insurtech, they're all the same thing, or they're close to one another. That's just a way of saying a lot of things that lawyers do are actually just finance in the first place. They're risk management through other means. Okay, but don't take my word for it. We have this, litigation funding. What is that? Betting on lawsuits. What are you doing anyway? Managing the risk of a lawsuit if you're a litigator. One of the biggest litigation funders is Warren Buffett, by the way, just for what it's worth. He tends to get on the right side of these things. This is a place where law has already been turned into insurance. So this is something that happens in mergers and acquisitions. People buy insurance because you can't You can't characterize, there's always risk, even if you acquire a company. So these folks sit in there and say, well, we'll sell you a policy. You can trade on decisions made by courts. That's another example. And then people are trying to process legal documents to find things they can use to trade on. So I don't think robot lawyers is the future. I think financialization of law is much more plausible. And I worked this out here at Fin Legal Tech. Okay, so just to kind of push through a few more things, I'd like to talk briefly about human capital and culture. So this is the demographic reality. We're about to have the largest generational transfer in human history. And every organization globally is challenged by this fact. There's going to be a lot of subject matter experts walking out the door. And if that expertise isn't memorialized somewhere, it's just gone. They're in retirement and you don't have that in your organization. So I think even if you don't agree with any of the rest of this, you'd say, we're going to need different types of human capital to support some of these trends. And I think that should be reflected in the content of legal education. So this is what legal education basically is, typically, is it's a liberal arts degree by other means. This is what it might become to better fit the market. I worked this out here. If there was an MIT School of Law, it would be world class. There is no such thing. But if there were, immediately say, oh, that'd be an incredible school, right? But that thing doesn't really exist currently. But it would be marrying kind of polytechnic with the legal in a sort of reasonable manner. And by the way, I'm not alone in this view. This is the dean of Northwestern's law school, wrote, law and engineering should share the same curriculum. Even Harvard is trying to chase down these STEM students because can't get them, because they have a lot of opportunity costs, to go into law school. So I'd rather do tech. Why am I going to do this law thing? Okay, so with that understanding of the current dynamics, inputs, and constraints, I'd like to close by looking a little over the horizon, if I might. Let's go a little over the horizon. So this is what we have in the field right now, chaos and complexity. So I teach this blockchain class right now, blockchainlawclass.com. We're adding more to it. It's about half the decks are up, half are not. But if you look over time, we've gone from hunter-gatherer societies to this massively complex global economic system, and we've had difficulty scaling trust and lowering transaction costs. That's been the fundamental arc of economic history, is trying to lower transaction costs and scale trust. So, without going into too much detail, the path from hunter-gatherers to the present, we've had different innovations along the way that have allowed us to scale trust and lower transaction costs. So there's different ways you might divide up the most recent set of history and project forward, but I would just do this. We had an analog era, we're sort of in the digital era, and we're moving into the computational era. And you could just divide up the last 150 years of history and put them in these buckets. And the key is that each era builds upon the era before it. So you get some of the properties of analog when you move into digital. We're moving into computable away from digital. And the World Economic Forum calls this idea the fourth industrial revolution. And this is what they mean. Cyber-physical systems combined. That computerization and automation. Now we're barely in the third industrial revolution in legal. We're just barely in the second/third, but we're trying. The world needs us to get to the fourth as fast as possible. So I would call what we're in the computational age. And I put my money where my mouth is. This is my blog, computationallegalstudies.com. You can make it your homepage if you're so inclined. But if you look, the analog era, the digital era, and the computable era, the hallmark of this era is the combination of artificial intelligence, crypto infrastructure, and the Internet of Things. That's what they mean by cyber-physical systems. That's the world we're moving into. Now, I want to show you that these are the ingredients. So I want to work through a couple of examples, and then I'll close. I think if you look in legal innovation, these map on very directly to what you'd see here. Analog, digital, computable. Analog is chaos and complexity. Digital is process and predictability. Computational is just complete reinvention of what we're doing and creating new types of value. This is what and I just say for the law students, this is what you could be as a lawyer, a person who really solves the underlying problem. That's still possible. I'll show you some of that now. So let's look at a few examples of the path to reinvention. So let's start with contracts or transactions. This is what it looks like today. They're moving huge amounts of money around with stuff that looks like this. It's kind of unbelievable. This is what process and predictability looks like. At least at a minimum, if we're doing all these transactions, we can keep track of basic information. Most organizations in legal today cannot even do that. They can't basically keep track of the work. And they can't reasonably characterize things like a cycle time, which would be a basic engineering proposition applied. Like, how quickly can we turn this document around? How complex is the document? Just really basic stuff is still not possible in this field. Most organizations are not there yet. But that isn't reinvention. That's just doing a reasonable job or bringing us into the modern era as a field. This is what reinvention looks like. I'll show you one example. Just this example you can generalize to lots of other problems. And this, I'll bring in some crypto for this and some IoT. Historically, there's been a policy sold for insurance, for in agribusiness crop insurance. And what happens is if there's you can't totally control the weather, and therefore, you might be able to get insurance against a drought or what have you. Now, the challenge is that is typically indexed to the yields you actually get. That is a very hard problem to adjudicate whether you had those yields or you didn't. Very difficult. There's a lot of fraud where people hide the grain in another silo or something like this. A much easier thing to do is to index to weather, which is to say, here are the indicias of a drought, and when those conditions are satisfied, you just get paid. And we don't get into whether you actually had the yield loss or not. So it's a very, very high-end contract to write. On the left is the natural language representation of the contract. On the right is the computable representation. Contracts want to become code. That's the whole idea. But how does this contract know that the drought conditions have been satisfied? Well, it needs to read off this IBM blockchain data that's being served up, censored, pre-processed, and served up, and being sold as a service, that this contract pings this system every day, and when the conditions are satisfied, it computes and pushes to another system and says, pay the person. And you've completely reimagined and reinvented the entire process. That's what we can do in so many parts of this field. If we just get past our orthodoxy a little bit. Because our orthodoxy says this is the way it has to be. It is not true. And the world's coming for it, one brick at a time. So a couple other places. If you look at discovery and compliance, those things are headed on a crash course for one another. Which is the very bad behavior that you try to find after the fact is the things you should have been looking for in real time. Like this has happened many times. A trader blows a hole in the bank. Somebody bribes a foreign official. Something goes wrong with a part in an organization and nobody can figure out, and it doesn't get surfaced to the right person. This is a one-off. I'll accept that this is a one-off. This is pretty hard. There wasn't a pattern of this in the past. The other three have happened many times in organizations. So the goal is to try to prevent that stuff in the first place. That looks like behavioral patterns and signal intelligence. That's what you're looking for. What is the hallmark of bad behavior? You ever had your credit card turned off because somebody made some charges they weren't supposed to? That's what that looks like, because there's a pattern and then you deviated from the pattern and it pings a system and somebody says, hey, put a stop and we'll figure out what's going on. My friend Ron Freeman calls this do less law. Fix the problem in the first place. Don't be the person who's trying to clean it up after the fact. I think you're going to see that a lot of legal risk management is going to become insurance. Today, we use lawyers as the computers of risk. But in other fields, we use underwriting and risk transfer vehicles in finance. So here's what a partially de-lawyered process looks like. I showed this earlier, where people said, I could keep having lawyers on this, or I could just sell insurance. And the insurance item is much more attractive to the buyer. In other areas, we've almost fully de-lawyered the transaction. So title insurance is almost a completely de-lawyered transaction now. It used to be that, you couldn't know for sure that you had proper title to something, so you could buy insurance. And now it's like, well, we don't need the lawyers that much. We just sell insurance, and that's the end of it. I think there's a lot more where that came from. I think there's a lot of opportunities to have scalable justice. So, why do I even go to court? Question mark. Can't we have a more scalable version of the justice system? Well, we do, actually. You may have just touched this. If you've ever had a dispute on eBay, There's a whole dispute resolution module that solves 60 million disputes a year without ever going to court. Because this is small dollar items. The point is that's what scaling justice looks like. It's not a full judicial process. It's a 100 euro item. It's not worth the whole court process, but somebody wants a solution. So we need to be more creative in thinking. And they've scaled this thing to, hundreds of millions of disputes they've solved. Can we have vastly alternative delivery models? I think you'll first get chatbots, then and only then will you get a robot lawyer. So this is a virtual therapist that the military has put together to create a physical. People say, well, you can't do the human part. Maybe you can actually. If you can just release your orthodoxy and say, well, what is actually possible? You think, well, we can't do therapy without a person. That's the ultimate of human activity. Well, maybe it is and maybe it isn't. So my closing argument is this. This field, legal innovation, in a sense, is a 5,000-year-old field. 5,000 years we've been innovating in law, from the Code of Hammurabi to the present. But we got lost somewhere along the way. But I think we're finally getting things back on track. And so I'm very bullish on the future. Not because I'm an optimist, but because of the trends that some of the trends I've tried to identify today and the opportunities that lie ahead. So to the legal innovators, I would say, stay the course. Keep pressing forward, because the legal innovation is global, is growing, and slowly winning. So I'm Dan Katz, Illinois Institute of Technology, Chicago-Kent College of Law. This is my company, LexPredict. This is my lab group at Illinois Tech, the Law Lab at Illinois Tech. I'm also affiliated faculty at Stanford Codex. This is my blog, Computational Legal Studies. It's really cool. I'm sure you're going to love it. Hit me up on Twitter, @Computational on Twitter, @Computational on Twitter, and this is my contact information. Thank you very much for your attention, and we'll open it up if we have a couple minutes, I don't know, for some questions, yeah?
Thank you very much, Daniel, for the very broad presentation. I will have to, review it once again at least, because there was so much of information and different aspects that you have touched upon. And in particular, thank you very much for actually finishing 2 minutes in advance, even earlier.
I'm a professional.
So that allows us maybe not 1 or 2 questions, or maybe 3 or 4 questions, then take a couple of questions right now. So I will ask Daniel, you to still stay on the floor.
I'm just bringing this up if people want to find us later. Go ahead, if people... So if you're looking for this deck later, it's available online. Question from... I think they have the handhelds if you want to use those.
First of all, I would like to thank you for your presentation. I am not a lawyer, and as a normal are you hearing me? Okay, yeah. As a normal person, I try to avoid 2 professions, doctors and lawyers.
Okay.
Yeah, that is what we are trying to do, but this is unavoidable. So at some point, you are getting in touch.
Yes.
But my question is, since I am from IT side, my question is about some detail in your presentation considering blockchains.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's a very big discussion if a private blockchain is anything new.
No, it's not.
Yeah, is it just a database?
Yes, it's a distributed database with permissions.
Yeah, so my question is, if really you can do a big disruption anywhere, including in law or insurance, using private blockchain technology.
I tried to show an example. I don't think the distributed database alone solves the problem I posited, right? Because you needed Internet of Things plus the blockchain plus some AI, right? I think it's the combination of those 3 that's pretty powerful. There are applications that are specifically blockchain only, but I think it's the combination of the 3. And again, this 4th industrial revolution idea that the World Economic Forum is pushing really posits this idea that it's the combination of these things in once that's very powerful. I think the use cases for purely blockchain with nothing else are more limited if you think about really transforming the economy. But again, if you look at that insurance example that I just put up, that's pretty powerful, because what happens today is a very lengthy and difficult process full of fraud, and it's very hard to adjudicate. So the lawyer of the future who can take these propositions and instantiate them in code can create unbelievable amounts of value. Now the question is, I mean, in terms of specifying the conditions under which somebody would get paid under this crop regime, right? This crop insurance regime, and then helping administer the delivery of the insurance contract. But again, it doesn't just involve a distributed database. Yes, in a lot of, I taught this blockchain class. I said, in some ways there's nothing new here. It's there are some new aspects. First, I think you could not have had distributed databases that had this amount of power without, Moore's law and Kreider's law working together and network architecture basically to the level we have it. So this has happened a lot. Like an idea has been around for a long time, but other things had to happen to unlock the potential of that idea. And I think that's what you're seeing. So I agree though. In some ways the blockchain's about a bunch of hoopla about a thing that already existed. But I think it's justified still, notwithstanding.
We have one more question, yes? Dean.
Tomas, Vilnius University Faculty of Law. I heard, I loved your sentence once you said in your presentations that the smartest person in the room is the room. You wanted to say that machines or the data can change the person to some extent. And in your slides here, we saw that the data-driven machines, artificial intelligence, can produce better results, and the lawyer should be using this opportunity. Yes. But at the very end, don't you think that it's still what is unique for the humans, that we still need a person in the background to take a final decision? And this feeling of to be subjected by the person, by the human, maybe this is also kind of trust, kind of humanity issue, kind of control, or from another side, the tool to control the people by some higher forces, let's say. How you would argue, what you can say against this argument?
I think if you said, listen, we want to keep pilot in the cockpit, even though we're going to have a plane fly an autopilot, I'd say, okay. If I said, we have a process that used to cost X amount of dollars, now it's substantially cheaper because I have automation and a human sitting around parts of that, that's pretty fundamental for a field. I mean, we're training lawyers, right? We're training them under the notion that there's some economic value in when they come out. If that whole market is getting disrupted by these types of forces, it's pretty material, even if people said, well, listen, we're going to keep humans in some parts of this. I don't know why I want a human doing all this document review necessarily, especially when there's been plenty of demonstrations that a human machine guided gets you a better result, right? But there's most of the money in the field isn't doing that type of stuff because they got to review 1 million documents, right? So maybe you can imagine, and this is going on across the entire economy, is we have these fields which are heavy on subject matter expertise, which are getting kind of upended. So I don't have a problem of saying, well, let's leave. We don't want to totally remove the humanity from this. But the problem is this field is so far on the one end of the spectrum, it has no direction to go but in this direction. Even if you may say, well, that's far enough. I mean, that's one answer. The second answer is, I don't think it's really going to be up to us exactly. I mean, the lawyers will do everything they can. His is the public reflection, which is if we could have less lawyers involved in things, that would be okay by the public, right? So anyway, those are my thoughts in response.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? The last question for the moment? Yes, please.
I had something like coming from the legal education industry. I have a question with respect to what do you think, how should the legal education change in order to kind of meet the challenges that the legal tech is actually posing? Because currently we probably have an issue that when the students graduate from bachelor degrees, most of the professors as well as professionals think that they're not really ready for the profession, meaning that they cannot do the legal research properly, they cannot make the decision, and they actually have to be taught anew. But I thought, in light of all this technology, maybe this legal studies they just become irrelevant whatsoever.
Well, I mean, again, my own view is that, like lots of sectors, there needs to be better product market fit. Okay, so that's a term that's like, here's the market and here's the product, and the product's here and the market's here, and those need to be brought into some sort of balance with one another. And so if you said, well, what's the market want? They want a polytechnic lawyer. That's what the world is requiring. The challenges of the world are these problems of that nature. So if you kind of are kind of like a full humanist and you know nothing about all these technical challenges, I don't think that you can really deliver a lot of value to the problems of the world, if that makes sense. So I think we have to, even if you're going to tackle these great humanistic questions, you still need to know what we're actually talking about substantively on a technical level. So my view is, as I said, let's have an MIT School of Law. I teach at Illinois Institute of Technology, which is one of the only law schools that's like truly linked to a technical school. There are only a handful in the whole world that are like this. The legal tradition is humanistic first, tech 17th on the list or something like that, 1000th on the list. That has got to get turned around somewhere. And I think it's a great opportunity too. That's the more important thing. You say, well, where's our opportunity as a school to make a distinction? Is it going to be that if everybody's doing this thing and the world needs this, I'd say try to go towards that and don't worry about what other schools do, you know, because we usually copy other schools. You should copy what the world needs and don't worry about the other people. But that's the innovator in me talking. Okay. I think it's time for a coffee, isn't it? Yes, thank you.
So I invite everybody for the coffee, which is just outside the room, and we have 20 minutes, around 20 minutes for the coffee, and then please come back to the room for the discussions.
Okay. We covered a lot, and
I will myself have to, look again. We are recording it.
Yes.
I know we have not asked actually your permission.
Oh, that's fine.
But yeah, we have to do that.
Okay,
I just
well,
realized
I'll
now.
sign a paper. And
Yeah, now, with all this data
yes,
protection and
yes.
all the other things.
I'll have to turn you into the GDPR police or something like this. But good.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
wonderful that you fit in the time, because I was just, looking how we're going to fix the it's a professional.
Don't need to worry. I'll hit the mark, like I said. We started like a little off the agenda, but I got us back on the agenda. So,
Great.
so now they can have a coffee.
Yes, yes, you can revive your
I will.
energy.
Yeah. Oh, and then
Yeah, I will
you
just
probably
ask,
this needs to go here.
to put the slides of the event.
Hello. Hi, Lucas. Oh, good. Okay. Welcome to take that as an idea. I saw somebody do this once, so that's where I got the interest from. I thought, you're not using it, it's going too quickly. You can't even actually read it.
Jo, bet mes turim programą gražiai uždėjus, bet tada ne visi pajungia savo kontą. Aš galiu pažiūrėti, galbūt yra Vilniaus logotipas.
Gal mes galime tiesiog uždėti tą, ką mes Facebook'ą dėjom.
Mes jo galim.
Jo, nes kažkaip, gaila, kad nuotraukų, bet sakė, kad kadangi jisai buvo pasijungęs kompą savo, tai...
O, negalima.
Žiūrėjau, bet šitas mažai. Bet aišku, jis žiūri, greit šneka.
Ir kas 2 sekundės kitą skaidrą jungiu.
Tai tas gerai, kad bus įrašas, nes galima bus. O tiesiog negalima išėjti.
neleidžia man, Facebookas nesaugus tinklalapis, neleidžia savivaldybės kompo prisijungti. Gerai, kur man yra, kaip aš kokiam visamam susirašinėjime?
O į merų galite įtis per internetą? Merų puslapį ten yra. Nesusirašinėjime, tai aš jau irgi neatsimenu.
Jo. Čia kontrol ne toj vietoje.
Aš tai visas vietomis.
Aš žmonių 35 suskaičiau, bet čia su mumis. Šitą dėt? Piešinuką? Šitą tokią, ne?
Tiesiog šis...
Ova. Save images.
Tai pervežim baneris?
Jau gal tiek to.
Čia slaidai irgi man.
Ne, aš manau, dabar jau nebeprasminga, nes nepradžioju, buvo prasminga.
Kaip man jį dabar uždėt per visą? Taip? O. Gerai. Ir jau slaidų nebebus.
Slaidų Martinas bet antroji diskusija.
Einam gal į viršų, ar nereikia? Ne? Aš turiu viską paruošęs.
gal visai ir smagu. Taip, čia vat už tai ir... Okay, so most of the people are already back here, so we'll start our discussion in a minute. Even though we are up here, I hope we will have a discussion which is down to earth, which has a lot of examples. We'll talk about the applications of legal technology and some examples. We have 1 hour for our discussion. I think we can do it in half an hour, and then to move to the questions, since there are not so many of you, but I guess everyone has questions. To begin with, my name is Lukas Keraitis. I'm a radio show host at Žinių, radijas, where I host a show, Skaitmeniniai, horizontai, digital horizons. There we talk about new technologies and digital culture. And that's enough about me for today. Let me present you the members of our discussion. Of course, Mr. Daniel Katz, you already heard of it. Yep. Next to me is Tomas Krilavičius. Everyone can you test the microphone, Thomas? So, yeah. Yes. Okay. So Tomas is from Vytautas Magnus University of Faculty and of Informatics. He's also a chief scientist at the Baltic Institute of Advanced Technology. So I guess Thomas will have some remarks on artificial intelligence. Yeah, Thomas. And there is also Paulius, associated professor from Mykolas Romeris University Faculty of Law. He's also a chief legal counsel at TELIA Lietuva. So, hello, Paulius. Since we already heard some from Mr. Daniel, I would like to ask some questions from our other discussion members. So, I'll go straight to the point, as I'm used to on the radio, because we have not so much time. So, Paulius, what would you say are the problems that could be solved by legal technologies in Lithuania now?
Hello. I think all companies, as it was mentioned in the presentation, I represent these bad clients who like to skip from lawyers, and we're creating something for ourselves internally. I mean, for TELIA as a company. I hope you are familiar with this company. We are working in ICT. We are working in ICT. So what does it mean? That means that we have our internal IT and artificial intellect guys. So it is much more easier for us to find some solutions. And we were working for a long time ago, discussing about what legal tech tools can help. And we think that legal tech is just a tool for the beginning, maybe after more. And I just like to tell the very beginning of our discussion a few years ago, how it happened. We decided that we need some artificial intelligence tool. We decided what we'd like to do, and we invited our IT guys. And they were listening, and they said, you do not need artificial intellect. So it's very simple. We can do it in an easier way. Okay, so it was a bit stress for us because we understood that it's something buzzy and something interesting. So what we are using at the moment, or what we are testing, I think that was a question. Now we're testing chatbot as a solution. It's in test stage.
Is it for Lithuanian market? It's in Lithuanian language?
Sometimes we're talking, are there any borders in the internet or in software and etc.? My answer is yes. There are some borders, natural borders like languages, like jurisdictions, still borders, because there are some translation and interpretation products, but they are not perfect yet. So no, it's not for Lithuania, it's not in Lithuanian, and it's not adopted for, let's say, Lithuanian legislation. But let's look at the market and at the legal problems, especially when we're talking about very, let's say, buzzy regulation
GDPR, which we know is just unified for all EU. So we can use it just with this remark of language. That's an issue. But the regulation is absolutely the same for all countries. So how this chat bot is working, and it looks quite nice and quite good. If you have a contract, for example, without GDPR issue solved, so you, as doesn't matter, lawyer or employee who is working with the procurement, for example, or something like that, you can ask questions. Chatbot is asking questions and you are going to some solution, and you are reaching some solution, some let's say sentences, clauses, and etc. So it's a very simple way.
But I would like to ask about still again the Lithuanian language. So you don't have any plans to making it possible to speak Lithuanian, to be available in Lithuanian markets? Because we have a lot of chatbots who are being used in English. But what about Lithuanian language?
No,
isn't that an issue? Or?
Yes, that's an issue, and we agreed in the group of the companies, TELIA, that first what we will do, we will customize English version, and afterwards, if it's needed, so it could be translated to other languages, and it's quite issue at the moment. It's quite big issue.
Yeah, I don't know if Daniel ever tried to use Google Translate in Lithuanian to say something.
Yeah.
If you try, you'll see that's really complicated. And what do you think, Daniel? If we don't have this natural language processing, chatbots in Lithuanian language, can't we lag behind of the market? Because we don't have at the moment.
Oh well, I wouldn't know necessarily about the difficulty of the translation, but I would think it'd be pretty material. We were having a discussion at the coffee, and thinking, well, what are the easiest problems to work on? And you sort of think contracts are the most generalized document around the world in law. So that's why you've seen the most cross-national sort of product offerings in that. Now, I don't think necessarily they would try to necessarily move that into Lithuanian or what have you, but the challenge is anything where that's super localized is hard. Is intrinsically not scalable, so it's not necessarily the most logical starting place. A chatbot is difficult because you need to create that interactive environment where, if there's a slight imperfection, maybe the user gets frustrated and doesn't use it, whereas imperfect translation, if a human is going to do a little touch-up, is a totally different exercise than an immediate two-way engagement, which a chatbot is, of course. And that's.
But what are the risks if in the next 2 years, 3 years, we are not going to have a Lithuanian chatbot, any Lithuanian chatbots? Like Google Assistant is about to make calls for you,
Yes.
as we know. Last week it was
Yes.
announced, and in 2 years we don't have any chatbot that can speak Lithuanian. You don't think that's a risk for us, like in LegalTech?
Well, I don't know the details of your market. I would think, again, that, I tried to say people have to rationalize their own business. So they have to think that it would be economically viable to build something like that and get a return. Otherwise, they're going to stick to languages that have greater scale, like, I don't know, Mandarin or something like that would be much more.
So it sounds like Lithuanian might be left out because
It might.
Yeah.
Or at least it wouldn't be first. It wouldn't be first on the list. What you said is, let's see if we can even do it in English or in a language that spoke French or something that's spoken by more people. And then if we can do that, then we might try to think about the carry through, because there's how do you architect the problem in general, and then how do you solve the specific language aspect, which would be, taken to any language. And I don't know.
In principle, that's correct, because when we're talking especially about artificial intellect, we need a lot of information, big data, and et cetera, and et cetera. So it's not enough just to have a few cases and to make some rules,
But that's not so bad in principle, because there are a few possibilities. Let's say, as we mentioned, contract creation. When we are creating from blocks, there are some clauses, and you are making. So then it's much more easier to make. We can have the same blocks in thousands of variations and languages. Yeah. It doesn't matter. So it's not an issue. So then it's easy. But when we're talking about chat box and etc., so it's...
That's a much harder problem.
Yeah,
I don't know why people would try to do the hardest problem before we did the simpler stuff. Yeah. I mean, it just, I mean, like we call it contract genomics, but this is just this idea of like, well, I can bit flip this contract, but there's, most of it is, okay, I put in this clause or this version, a fallback position or what have you, and you can get a long way like that way, without having to get into all the hardest part of the water, which is definitely real-time language translation that has high fidelity is like much harder problem than many other problems, or even legal language versus generalized language, much easier to do. Have an assistant call a place to make an appointment for you is a much simpler problem than go into technical legal language or medical language, by the way. I mean, this isn't just a law problem, but that's a much harder proposition.
Okay, so we leave the chatbots behind. I'm a little bit sad because I always wonder, like, when are we going to have chatbots in Lithuania? And it doesn't look like, because if the companies are moving to the market, of course, they think about the market, the language.
They have to,
Yeah, but that would be useful for the customers, I guess. Like, there are chatbots in legal technology, like that could dispute the parking tickets, for example. That's customer-orientated products. Okay, so leaving the chatbots behind, let's talk about artificial intelligence. Just as Daniel mentioned before, it's also a topic everyone talks about. So, Tomas, do you know any examples of artificial intelligence being used in Lithuania in legal technologies?
Yes, so hello everybody, first of all, and actually there are some applications which maybe you are not going to see as direct application of artificial intelligence, but basically when we are talking about language processing, you always use some elements of machine learning, or maybe when you are talking about artificial intelligence, even logical or rule-based systems, when you can find some tools like tools produced by Lexinova, where we already use some of these technologies partially, logic-based or text processing stuff, and things like that. So
what are they using for? What exactly what they use?
So basically, if you want to have good information retrieval system, so if you want to be able to find something, you already have to process text. And methods which you are using to analyze text, basically they fall under the big artificial intelligence umbrella. So even if you use simple rules, that's already artificial intelligence. Of course, maybe it's not deep learning or machine learning, but it's already artificial intelligence. So these things are used. And actually, if we are talking about legal technologies overall, Westlaw was the first information retrieval system at all. So these things are quite common and used quite a lot. Of course, in Lithuania, artificial intelligence is used less in legal tech because, first of all, most of our companies should take care of their processes. So we can do a lot of smaller and simpler things to improve, let's say, document generation or summaries generation or identification or something, or building smart contracts. So.
What I was thinking when Daniel was speaking. I was thinking, how much of the legal technologies that you're talking, AI and stuff like that, how much of them are just simply about saving time, like making the same things more efficient, and how much of them are really something new, making something new?
Well, I mean, I try to show you that we can't even do basic things right now, and a lot of it, I mean, how long does it take us to complete a contract is not a question people can typically answer. How much risk is there in this agreement? So that seems like a very basic proposition that would precede even AI as just process, or even be able to retrieve. Like a retrieval problem in law would be, how do I find the agreement that's most like this one I'm about to draft, or what have you? So. Some organizations do have sometimes systems for that, or being able to do better enterprise search would be helpful. If you don't have that today, it's on the AI spectrum. I completely agree, but it's not like the fanciest stuff like deep learning or something. It's just more making us more modern, I guess, for lack of a better.
Yeah, that's the first thing to do, right? Because like in the media, we can hear about more exotic things. Let's say, algorithms that help judges to predict behavior and stuff.
Yeah.
But as you talked, most of the stuff is, it could be used not even in law. It could be used in any firms, in any business, just to speed up the processes, automate the processes.
Yeah, and I think it was this gentleman was talking about, some of this is just repackaged stuff that has already been done before, but you can still, like, legal is behind other fields, so you can just do things reasonably in this field and get a lot of credit, but it isn't like this is the front of the field for all of artificial intelligence. We have very few problems that can be characterized as that, but it solves a problem is the point. It would solve a problem in this space that was material. I mean, at least as we're talking about AI in legal versus AI in general.
Okay, we also had a question about blockchain. I really want to touch it because in Lithuania, blockchain, I guess it's more popular than AI. The discussion about blockchain is really a buzzword, blockchain this, blockchain that. We have a lot of ICOs in Lithuania. So could you name any examples? You named some methods how it could be used. Do you know any examples like firms who use blockchain like right now, and what problems do they solve? Like that's governments? Yeah, that's for you, that's for you.
So they're mostly these problems are in the pilot stage. Where I live, the county in where I live, Cook County, Illinois, has done a first pilot project in doing a land transfer using the blockchain. So transferring a deed between individuals, that's an application area. Conveyances would be the other term sometimes it's used for. That's a common transaction that lawyers are involved in, which is transferring deeds of property from one person to another. So you could do that. A blockchain could be used in that area. So that's one example. Another example, these are both on the government side, is digital identity. So another pilot that's being done in the state where I live, Illinois, is trying to have your birth certificate on the blockchain, so where you have a private key to that record. Because what we have now are these like scans of a document that says that you were born in this place at this time, and maybe you can get an original with a lot of effort. But if you think that piece of identification opens up a lot of other systems, so the idea that they were talking about a digital identity would start with a birth record and a death certificate, and then all these milestones along the way, like a marriage license or something like this, and you'd have a digital identity that would be rolled up into this kind of composite of different events. But those are at least two application areas, more government-oriented. There's some transactional stuff. I think it's still pretty...
but it's mostly in experimental stages.
It's pretty nascent, pretty early on a lot of these problems. Obviously, the most mature use cases are coins, but...
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So we are going... Yeah.
But those aren't really legal examples so much, right? Those are just...
Yeah, maybe one more, the same data protection. So in some cases, we can use for, keeping, exchanging data and etc. So it could be used in some cases. So now doors are opened. So it's just the creativity, what we will put on this technology, because we're talking about technology.
Yeah, that's exactly the point, I guess. So much talking about blockchain, but I mean something that would be really done and applicated now. It's not so many products. Everything is just being rolled out. So blockchain is like what a few more years to come when we can see like real products, real applications for blockchain technologies. What did you say? What would you say? How much time do we have to wait to see like really blockchain working in legal tech?
It's quite difficult to say because it's possible that somebody will make it tomorrow in the morning, something
in their garage.
Yeah, in the garage.
Yes.
And it's possible that we will not have some half and 2 years or something like that. So it's not predictable. But doors are open. So a lot of small startups are trying to utilize this technology for specific purposes.
Okay. Do we have any questions on blockchain? Because we already had one in the beginning. No?
Maybe I'll say one other thing. I think you can fundamentally reimagine the corporation I mean, that's what the DAO was an attempt to do, not a very unsuccessful one. If you're familiar with it, I was somewhat of a spectacular failure. But the notion is, if you've ever been involved in an M&A deal in any form, you know, people take these documents and they put them in these deal rooms that are the representation of the company, and they're obviously a very reduced form representation of the company, but this is the basis by which somebody buys or sells their company. And you think, well, listen, lawyers are playing the role of trying to actually sort out whether the documents are accurate, whether they need more information, but if you think about that, that's all friction in terms of getting access to capital, and I think ICOs have sort of shown us that. But if you know, an ICO is just kind of one example in the most extreme sense, but a simpler one is to say, I want my company to have a level of transparency that makes me better able to access capital faster, because I can go to a bank and I can say, here's all of it right here, and it's kind of by design. I've basically set up this organization from the beginning so that it can lower its cost of capital by having every relevant document available. So I think right now, lawyers are there, you go into these, especially these startups, and they got to clean up all their documents because it's a disaster, right? Anyway, I think that's like pretty material in terms of, you know, being able to access capital more quickly and with less friction would be a pretty material payoff, I think, for all of this.
I also really want to ask about more exotic technology, is the predicting behavior and predictive analytics. I know an example of Compass algorithm being used in USA. I guess it's one of the best known. It helps judges to predict assets of risk of recidivism. Do we know any predictive analytics tools used in Lithuania? I also ask our colleagues, do we have this kind of tools?
As far as I know, no application, at least in legal case, or it's not, you know, it's not announced officially. Of course, and in my opinion, still a lot of application of predictive analytics in legal technologies are more experimental.
Yeah, but in USA it's being used in practice, in real life. And why don't we have this even in Europe, I guess, not even Lithuania?
Yeah, one of the things, of course, you have enough of documents, enough of data to do some prediction. And then a lot of things depend on quality of your data. So basically, you have negative examples as well. When you try to, when you know you have wrong data, or bias in data, and you get wrong predictions. So I think there are some cases in USA also related with problems trying to use such prediction systems.
Yeah.
So, and it's not easy to get, you know, non-biased data nowadays.
There was a paper published in a computer science journal called PeerJ, predicting European Court of Human Rights outcomes. And just to give you a concrete European example, it's very interesting. We were kind of having this discussion on the side about, well, how would I predict something? And then, you know, this actually gets into kind of legal theory a little bit, is there's a sort of mechanistic way sometimes we talk about what the process actually is. If you look at what they did in the paper, it's much less than the full-fledged representation of the law that we would typically teach our students. But that had higher predictive accuracy. I mean, they tried a bunch of different things, but the one that worked was a relatively, not an overly nuanced model, I guess you'd call it, but was trying to do this prediction task. Now, the question, I think, for all of us is, could you get better predictive accuracy if you were able to better represent the law in some way more than what they did, which is like a bag of words model, basically applied to the text of previous decisions. But I just want to say, like, there's at least one example in a peer-reviewed academic journal, peer science journal, of trying to predict a judge's behavior, or set of judges, what have you.
Yeah, and how to deal, you know, all these technologies, they require a lot of data. How to deal with the biased data, and that, you know, the data that is being inputted in some technologies, that it is correct. Because if you don't put the correct data, you don't get the correct answers. And who is going to review, like Daniel mentioned, automatic process can review million papers, but who is going to review if they review that correctly? Because some scientists saying they don't really know sometimes why the AI applications work, what exactly makes them work.
Well, first of all, the idea is that, as you mentioned, that scientists don't know why we work. So basically, we know how well they work, but we don't know why particular method works. One method works better, another works worse. But that's not in all cases. In some cases, you can use methods which are more predictable, which you can, statistical methods, you can actually check a lot of properties, why it's working worse and better. Of course, there are a lot of techniques how to, check bias of your data, quality of your data. But still, if you start talking about, 100 years history of legal data, for example, and you try to put all the documents, it's not easy to identify even change of a dictionary, not talking about, all other aspects. So basically, there are a lot of things which you have in your documents. Some of them are still relevant, some of them not, but if you want to use them, you have somehow to identify what is relevant. So in addition, you get a lot of additional tasks, which may be things which are known by humans from some other type of education, but which you don't have in your system.
Okay, so talking about relevance, Paulius, I would like to ask you, so what do businesses in Lithuania want from LegalTech? What problems do they want to solve?
Yeah, so we were asking ourselves for...
please, could you move the microphone? So
yeah, sorry. We were asking ourselves about these issues, and by the way, how do you think, what was our answer, internal answer?
I'm wondering.
Yeah, so we were listing a lot of, we had long list, and the main problem was, or main issue was simple, repetitive questions inside the company. For example, if we're taking, let's say, semi-legal issues like who can sign this contract? It's simple, but it's complicated for specific persons, and there are a lot of such questions. And these questions are killing lawyers because they are really simple and there are a lot of calls, a lot of emails, and etc. And it's quite easy to solve these issues by using some simple, let's say, tools. And that's what I said, why our guys said, you do not need artificial intellect. So
yeah, but is Microsoft Excel enough? You still need some, some smarter decision than you have already. So, what is enough? Do you really need some smart AI, or what kind of solutions you need?
Normally you can use it in question answers way. So it's not artificial intelligence in general, let's say. So it's more simple machines. But it's quite easy to shift to more complicated issues, questions. But the issue, when you were discussing about quality of information, one of main questions is quantity of information. If you have quite a lot of information, so you are filtering this wrong data. So quantity can solve some quality issues. So that's how this system works. So that's normal, procedure and normal control of quality.
I would like to ask the same question to everyone. Maybe someone could tell what problems do you see in Lithuania that could be solved maybe by legal technologies? What problems maybe you have in your company or as a lawyer? What do you see as the main problems? I think it's the main question here. We can speak about technologies, but what are the problems to be solved? I'm not a lawyer, so I don't have any problems. For me, it's okay. We can do it like we do now. It's good for me. I want chatbots. I want all the customer-related, customer-orientated things. So you need to go to a lawyer. So what do you think? What are the problems? Yeah. Yeah, you can use the microphone. Yeah, just push the button.
I just do not want to answer to this question, sorry, because I think it's not the most important question. What we are doing now, we have a chance to make breakthrough on legal technology issues in Lithuania. And I think it's the biggest breakthrough. It's not applying something for local market. The biggest issue to look our opportunities for global market, what we can do as a small country, world-class products, and it's not about applying for local markets, it's just opposite direction. That's just my remark.
Yeah, I see that I'm too much focused on local, I guess. That's my view. I have not so much of the idea how much lawyers in Lithuania work with the world products and worldwide. But yeah, do you see any problems? That was my question. Do you see any problems that you would like to be solved by legal technology, or you just wanted to make the remark?
Yeah, personally, our company, we let's say, in simple words, we systemize Lithuanian law. We just recognize texts and connect them to legal practice or case law. That's what we are doing. And of course, this task is done by other companies, world-class companies as LexisNexis, Westlaw, and smaller ones, but more or less the same task. That's systemizing the law. That's what we are doing.
Okay, so my next question is, how much the law can be systemized? Like, how deeply can it be systemized? Since law is basically, it's rules, so it goes well with systemating and automating computer things.
Before we jump to that, I just want to say, I already know the answer to the question. There's only one answer when he talks about the companies. It's make the deal happen faster. Recognize the revenue quicker. There's always one answer. It's true everywhere in the world. They want to have the lawyers get the deal done faster. Any transaction, whatever it is, try to lower the risk where you can, but I just want the deal to close. And like, that's always the answer everywhere. So the question is, obviously, we can't just let them sign every agreement that comes in, so there has to be some controls put on, but like not having needless time going back and forth on something where there's no value. I mean, that's what everywhere I go, if you went and asked, not even the legal department, ask the CFO or the sales side of the business, they say, get the lawyers, get the work done quicker. That's anyway, I think that's like fundamental. So if automation can play a role in that, if having checklists and having better processes can do that, great, or some combination of those ideas. That is like always the answer to me. Everywhere, I doubt it's different here.
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. Efficiency and cost saving, so that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Faster and cheaper.
Okay, so Daniel, when you know a lot of examples of legal technologies. So when you look a new product, a new service, how do you evaluate if it's going to work, if it's good, if it's working? So that's the point. Like how fast it can grow the revenue. How do you evaluate a new product?
Well, we need to look at the size of the market. That's usually the starting point. They'll look at the quality of the solution. Look at the people who would be purchasing it and whether they care about a quality difference. I tried to say in my comments earlier, you might be 5% better, some amount better, but does somebody care enough to pay you for the 5%? Because if the answer is no, plenty of the history of business is full of things where somebody was 5% better, but no one cared and they couldn't sell it to anybody. So those are at least some of the parameters we would evaluate: is size of market, kind of ability to reach that market, quality of the solution you're proposing, and those would at least be some of the parameters that you would look at when evaluating either a company or just an idea more generally. I don't know. And then maybe the technical merits would be evaluated of this proposed solution. But
okay. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, question?
Just not to forget that we are also here. I wanted to pick up a little bit on your previous question. Of course, there are lots of legal issues here in Lithuania that need to be solved, and I think they could be also solved with technologies. Just to give you an example, our free legal aid system, the pro bono legal aid, is not really working very well. So, for example, the offices are open only during the office hours. So if you want to get some assistance, and if you want to get this assistance after office hours, then basically it's not very much available, plus the quality and all other things. So I think in this respect, the technologies would be really something that for quite basic things could help the society actually to get some kind of, for example, documents, templates of documents or things like that. There are already companies that are running that, but unfortunately it's not free of charge. So again, that actually backlashes the free legal aid, because it should be free. But that's one area. But other thing that I wanted to actually ask, and building a little bit up on what Tauras was starting to say, actually where the legal tech products start and where they end. I mean, you started to ask about the problems. Yeah. You probably need to have a problem in order to start developing some products. But maybe more generally, what is this chain? What does it involve? Where it starts, where it ends? And as Tauras was mentioning, about Lithuanian market, global market. We are having a discussion actually, and I'm still myself not yet decided. When we think about legal tech products, should we actually look into Lithuanian market? Should we look for some products that are available globally and then see how to adapt them to the local market, because we have different legal system, we have different language, mentality and things like that? Should we just go for the global market like that when we think about developing legal tech products? So I know there are many aspects in what I'm asking, but maybe you can dwell on that as well.
Yeah. Who could answer that?
I can try. You know, the question is quite wide and important for small countries, for niche markets and etc. So I think first, what is most important, to have good platform, and afterwards to customize it. So when you have good platform, you can add specific apps on it. I mean something on addition. So if it's possible to do in this way, as we said about this contract creation. At first, the first stage, you need some software with some features, and then you can add something on top of this software, and that is customization. So you need just to adopt, and the same with, for example, with the bigger companies. At the moment, we just have no products what we just can copy and paste. We need to put a lot of our internal information, internal data. So it's quite similar issue like with the Lithuania. You know, there are some specific issues what you need. But good products must be oriented to customization, fast customization. But they must gain from big data collected earlier. So you need to have some pool for being better than just local products. And when we were discussing about what products to choose, so we received some advice from our IT guys. Please do not buy black boxes. Ready solutions, because you can't influence them. And as we discussed, in some cases, let's take the same chatbot. There is a possibility to use in various cases, for example, customer care, legal tech, and etc. So why you need to just to lock for one purpose? So you need some, let's say, solution, some software, some platform, and then you can add everything what you like. So that's, it was pinpointed in your presentation too. Open sources, I think there is a future for open sources.
You're going to have to have it because of those reasons, especially if you're going to customize it into a market. You're going to have, I mean, if you bought a prepackaged solution that was built in another jurisdiction, if you can't break it open and re-engineer it, it's not going to work. So I think open source is the way forward, especially if you want to serve the local market. That I don't think there's any, because somebody would have to build the last mile, but you want to get it like 85% of a solution that you can open up and then re-engineer to do the last 15% or whatever the percentages are, but that'll take you to open source, I think, pretty quickly. I mean, I would say, what's the market to address? I mean, if I was making an investment, I'd say don't go for the market as 3 million people, go for the market as 700 million people, like all of Europe or something, you know? I mean, that seems pretty straightforward to me. But of course, if there are problems that need to be solved locally, then try to use some of that stuff, use open source and engineer into the last mile. But just from a pure investment standpoint, it's pretty clear the bigger market is the 700 million or more folks. So.
And talking about open source projects, Daniel, do you know any, since we're talking about examples and case studies, can you give us any examples of some great open source projects, open source applications?
Well, outside of legal, there's many.
Like,
of them,
okay, so, but like two of your best, what you think really work
Scikit-learn
well?
and machine learning, which is a Python library, is really powerful stuff. It's you know, I don't know if people would be familiar, or you'd be familiar with Scikit-learn, but you know, that's a great project that's out there.
Well, could you tell shortly what it's about? I'm not familiar with that. So
it's a family of machine learning models that you can then customize or tune to a particular set of problems, but the underlying models are available, deployed in open source. So Python is a programming, object-oriented programming language. Scikit-learn is a module that you can basically access in that language that would allow you to write your own custom machine learning models. So that would be at least one example. What we've done with our own product, Contract Suite, and the flip of it's called Lex NLP, which is a natural language processing library that you can have for free in open source, or you can have which only requirements we have, which is a typical thing for open source, is you have to contribute back the positive developments, or, I mean, this is the other part of the business, or you can buy a private fork, but then we take some of the money and put it back into development of the open source. So again, this is very common in the economics of open source.
I wonder if anyone here in the
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so actually, if you look at components, open source components, you have plenty of them for different tasks in LegalTech as well. So if you look at information retrieval, it's at least Elasticsearch or Solr, for example. Yes. If you look, at machine learning, it could be Scikit, or you can go to TensorFlow, or all billion of different tools. If you look at NLP solutions, it depends on language, but even in Lithuania, you can find some free solutions also as well, developed also by universities and companies. So, I mean, you just have to know what you are looking for, and you can build some custom solutions for these parts. Of course, at some moment, when it comes to the play, knowledge about domain, these things usually are not free. So if you want to take, legal basis, you need some experts, help of experts to integrate it into your system.
Okay. You said there is plenty of possibilities in open source projects. I want to ask, have anyone in the auditorium at any time in their career used open source projects to make some, I don't know, really use open source projects in legal technologies? Any of you? Any on your, I don't know, everyday work or your companies? There are plenty of possibilities, so.
The two of us have, he and I have, I guess. 3.
Yeah, as you said, there are plenty of possibilities, but yeah, there are 2 people who actually done that. So
that's more than you normally see. Usually you see 0 in a group of lawyers. So
yeah, so it's a big, it's a big difference in possibilities and what is being used actually. Would you like to tell how are you using the open source project, Mr. in the front? Antani. Yeah, you said. Is there anything interesting with your project?
Okay, I'm Oh, okay, again, yeah. So, and we try to use open source word processing things and so on and so on. Yeah. And I should admit that my experience is from two sides. When we were going for some compilers for our research software, we were a successful one. We did not need a very specific and, how to say, professional. You can do your calculations easily on that. But when you are going for word processing or something like that, this is so wide accepted. Then you are immediately running to the trouble because your partner is not using exactly the same open source system. And when you are forced to switch to Excel, Word, or whatsoever. So I would say that for your own purposes, open source is extremely good. If you want to have a wide market, it can lead in trouble because typically this open source is not so wide. If you have something which is accepted everywhere, that's fine. If not, then you can run into trouble.
Okay.
Actually, sometimes you don't see that these solutions are used. So, for example, with food and whatever agency in Lithuania, if you look at their legal document search system, it's customized Elasticsearch. And I would guess that actually in quite a few places, also in governmental systems or etc., Elasticsearch or similar tools are used. So basically, of course, you get nice interface, which is customized to a specific problem, but usually open source solutions are used there, so it's not something exotic, it's quite common.
You're using all this open source stuff, you don't even realize it every day. It's been packaged up and then sold to you as a product, but what's underneath it is Elasticsearch or scikit-learn or something. I mean, there's all these things that you're touching every day where if you ever actually open up a car manual, like a new car, and you look into the back of the manual, they usually have to disclose that they're using it, and it's just full of disclosures about the open source licenses that they've invoked for the computers that are basically inside of like a new car, like a 2018 car would have. Anyway, it's just kind of funny that. So sometimes when we explain this about open source to people, it puts them at a bit of more ease when they realize, well, gee, I'm actually touching this in a bunch of ways that I wasn't even fully aware of. Because I mean, you don't think about that. You think, well, I have a Ford car, and I don't think about the fact of what's really in there from a componentry standpoint. Because most people are buying finished products, not worrying about the inputs to those products. But yeah, anyway.
Okay, one of the last questions I would like to ask you is, you know, we have a global tendency of all the products moving toward subscription models, subscribing like, you know, not only Netflix and Spotify, but I wonder, is it the same in legal technologies? When you buy products, when you buy solutions, is it like that you buy subscriptions or you buy like just once and you have the product? I have no idea, but like, really, I'm so interested. What is it like?
I think everybody like to sell such products.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's a tendency, yeah.
But is it so easy? My answer is not, because, you know, there are not so universal products, and it's when we're talking about legal issues, they are a bit specific at the moment. Maybe when we're talking about these general contracts and etc., so it is possible, but you know, competition is quite high. So why I need to buy a subscription if I can find some other products? So I think everybody like to sell, but market will show.
I would say that we have this for small and medium business. Most of them will move at some moment or quite a lot to service-based things, because, I mean, buying something is okay, but when you have to support it, and IT people are expensive nowadays, and I don't think they are going to get cheaper anytime soon. So, and to have support all the time, 24 times 7, it's expensive. So basically, it's easier to buy service, pay a bit all the time, get updates on the time, get support and things like that. It seems that this model, it works quite well, especially for small business.
So it goes well with the global tendency, kind of.
Yeah, SaaS is definitely, I mean, it's great too if you're running a SaaS company. I mean, you lose people at a certain rate, say, but you can kind of plan. You can plan like every company that's project-based would like to be a SaaS company, at least from an economic perspective. It's pretty fantastic. But you know, the challenge is that we still in legal have a lot of projects that are kind of one-offs that are not immediately subjectable to that, like, you know, pay me X dollars per month, I'll give you support, I'll give you a support package, and then I'll give you like some piece of software. That's what we'd love to, everybody would like to get to that, and there are some examples globally. There's actually less than there probably will be over the course of time. Every company, my company included, is trying to get to that as fast as possible because the economics are a lot better. Yeah.
Yeah, that answers the question perfectly. We are almost out of the time. Maybe someone would like to use the time to ask the last question about the technologies. We had some blockchain, we had chatbots. We still have some time for 1 or 2 questions, I guess. Anyone? Yep.
Thank you. My question would be exactly about the chatbots. Let's say, how do you think, how the human will react if he will know that he's speaking not to the real person, but to the chatbot? Don't you think that there would be some level of mistrust and even maybe some, don't know, okay, let's fix it to distrust. But could it be that our emotional response to the technology could be also a problem, including in legal tech, that some clients will simply require that we need a human lawyer, we don't need this I thing?
Yeah, we are back in the beginning, like we started with the chatbots, and I also heard this question during the coffee break, so. I guess, Daniel, you heard this question a lot, no? Because it's like the third time today.
I mean, one is you can have a human do every bit of this if you want to. You just have to pay for it, right? I mean, there's no requirement. I mean, a lot of these things, it's just, I could tell you what the price would be, and then a lot of you would say, well, I'm not going to do that. I mean, let's just say that's a starting point. You know, we might say on other grounds we want to have a person involved. I mean, again, if you think about what legal really, where it really is today, that's like so far off in the future that we've done so much automation that that's our problem. Our problem now is we haven't even done the easy things, the things that are like don't even ask these deep questions about what's the role of humanity in all this.
Yeah.
Like, can I figure out how long it takes us to close a deal? Can I make it go a little faster? Just like really basic stuff like that. I think. You know, in some ways we sidetrack ourselves a little bit with those concerns when we're talking, at least immediately, on some stuff that's much more sort of less consequential, I guess. But I mean, it is an important question, I think, but it's really well beyond. It's like for a lot of problems, what's the role of a human? For your doctor, you know? Now, I think it's more stark to people there. If I told you that your radiologist was not as good as a machine at predicting whether you have lung cancer, you might say, all right, I'll take the machine, right? Yeah, I mean, everybody has a theory, and then they say, okay, but I actually just I want to get the best answer. Yeah, anyway, I think people are more disarmed by it. It's like, well, I don't have a deep stake in it, but we do when it's our own field. If this was a radiology conference, then we'd be rationalizing why we have to have humans in that process 100%. I don't know. But,
Yeah, but there are other things which are happening when you have humans and chatbots. Usually humans start playing with chatbots, so asking some questions like, what is 2 times 2, or what is the meaning of a life, and all this stuff. So basically,
so he doesn't know what to say.
Questions that matter, really, yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. In some cases, we are using these chatbots in customer care, for example, and that's not so bad. You can see that you have your questions, and you're receiving answers faster than, for example, by email or something like that. So, and I think that is an issue related to our understanding. present generation understanding, because younger people like communicate with the computer much more than we are. And I think there will be some simple changes in understanding, because young people don't like to call to receive some information. It's too boring. They can ask 5 questions at the same moment from different chatbots, and that's it, and it's more comfortable for them. So, you know, we're asking from our perspective, but changes are, you know, quite interesting, and I think we will change.
Yeah, just to add, as in the Google example, you don't necessarily need to know that you're talking with a chatbot. Like, you're talking with some person and you don't even know that's a chatbot, usually.
I mean, a lot of times those windows come up and people think they're talking to somebody, and you know.
And Twitter accounts, they're following Twitter accounts that are also bots. And
yes,
yeah,
yes,
so.
we've had more than one of those Twitter accounts.
Whole
armies of Twitter accounts.
Yeah. One more question?
I think I saw Daniel perform this, he gave his performance like in London, New York, you know, he's up in front of law firms, big law partners. So my interest is the more you go and see and you talk about, you know, technology, how do they see it? Like, is it still like, you know, you have these perceptions that, you know, we still need a human to do that? Or, you know, we know some law firms are implementing, big law firms implementing technologies, they're working with startups. So, but you know, your feel of going to the legal market?
People have been on a journey with these questions. And when you first would sort of raise it, they would say these things. I think in some of these markets, things have come along far enough where people were sort of saying, okay, this is really the harder problem. How do I reorganize my business while not trying to you know, I realize these changes are hitting us. I'm getting hit by all sides. I'm trying to figure out how to turn my organization over fast while still trying to essentially keep making money so that we can keep things going. But I think I've seen a substantial change in the behavior personally, especially by leaders of large law firms when it comes to these questions. I don't think they really have the complete answers as to what to do, but I think that there's been a real sea change when it comes to attitudes about this. And I think it's because the clients themselves, meaning say the 5,000 largest companies who form the basis of most of at least large law firms' client base, have had, not every one of them, but enough of them are putting these pressures that the market is sort of working, I guess you might say. So that's where the market opportunity is to try to help serve that basic desire to do the work better. So I think it's on an arc. There's still a long way to go, but there's been a real sea change as I see it.
Yep. Would you like to clear something
Excuse
out?
me for one more question, but I wonder, is there a role for augmented reality in legal tech? And can anyone from the panel imagine a technology that would include augmented reality into legal tech products?
What was this last thing you said? Last part you said, a what in the?
Any visions how augmented reality can affect legal tech products?
How can it be implemented into legal tech?
You guys want to say anything?
Well, of course, if you are thinking about, you know, all these science fiction movies where you have glasses and you see information about somebody, of course, in some sense you can use these things. So basically, instead of just, you know, browsing something on your phone or computer, you can just have maybe this information a bit faster by identifying some person you are talking and knowing the legal status or company or something like that, but that's, you know, that's just speculation.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speculate. I've seen people mock up ideas like using eye tracking to try to put on a document an overlay to bring your eyes to the places where you ought to look in the document for something, right? But I mean, you don't need that in the physical document. This would be done on the screen. The other part is an AR, but VR is sort of going to work in an immersive environment where you put on your goggles and go to work. Now that's very plausible as I see it over the coming years, but that isn't a legal thing. That's the whole economy. And I guess that's going to be one of these things where borders are going to become, again, increasingly less important, because I might go to work in another part of the world by putting on my headset or whatever. But the reason, I mean, if you ever try to do, if you just like to get a Skype meeting is like an impossible thing still, so to make it work. So we obviously have a ways to go. We might have a person on Mars and still not have Google Hangouts working effectively. So I am a little bit skeptical given our ability. Video conferencing seems to be impossible to carry off reasonably. But, you know, you asked us to rampantly speculate on that, so I thought I'd just speculate. But.
Yeah, to sum up, I guess AR and VR are good for PR. That's I just came up with it. So, yeah. So, okay, the last question now. Yeah.
Well, just before asking question, I would comment about virtual reality. In Lithuania, we have very simple example. Know your court. That's like a video simulation for people coming first time to the court, just to know real environment. It's pure elements of virtual reality, just for newcomers to the courtroom, just to know how it works. And really, it's quite simple thing and works well. And my question is really about artificial intelligence. I think there's a lot of confuse of misusing these terms. I even saw the demand, please change every mentioning in my browser of artificial intelligence to statistical ranking system. Because usually 90% what's called so artificial intelligence is simple statistical ranking. It's much simpler thing. Can you define some limit of this? What's right to call? Of course, IBM Watson is definitely artificial intelligence. But
some of it is statistical ranking. I don't know if you have any deep thoughts about it. I could certainly chime in.
Well, I would just say that today artificial intelligence sells best. So that's
there you go. Okay, that's the PR department.
That's marketing term.
Machine learning or statistical machine learning, you know, or logics or fuzzy logics or whatever. So you just, I mean, in science and business, you always have these buzzwords changing each other.
Yes.
That's all.
So I mean, I know that that's somebody trying to, you know, this idea is to try to, what are you doing when you do the process? A lot of times we're doing something kind of like that, though. So in other words, the intelligence, the human intelligence sometimes isn't any more than ranking a list either. So when you artificialize that, I don't see it's really like, can you supplement or can you basically replicate the process that a person's doing today? Then that asks you that calls upon you to say, what is that process or reason roughly? And so if it's just ranking a list statistically using our CPU up here, then that's fine. That meets the criteria to me. But again, I know people have it's like, if it's not deep learning, it doesn't count, you know, which is ridiculous, but to me.
Yeah, just to sum up, I guess we have this problem in Lithuania. On the radio is the same. If you're tired of saying AI, you can just use smart this, smart that. So that's a problem, especially if you try to translate all the machine learning, deep learning to Lithuanian. That's a problem. But for the broad public, I guess it's necessary to do that. But I guess that's a broader question for maybe another discussion. So to sum up, I guess we didn't talk much about the robot lawyers and VR and AR, which sounds exotic and nice to talk. I guess it comes back to the main idea that I really liked in the beginning, that operational excellence is more important than expertise, subject matter. So as I see now after the discussion, that the problems are more like really to the ground about automation, about bureaucracy, and not about how the robot is going to look or how is it going to walk to your office or something like that. So. Thank you very much. It was a fast roundup of technologies. We want to go fast and touch a lot of topics. I guess we can talk more in the coffee break. And yeah, after the coffee break, please come back. We have another discussion, right? Yeah, please.
Thank you very much for the panel and for the moderator. We don't have the break for coffee between the two panels, so I will just invite Virgilijus Pajaujis to set up the new panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay,
It's the
very
question
good.
you heard before, but
No, it's good. It's good. It's
I hope we go through.
yes, no, I think
Yeah, if you, I guess.
a legal chatbot in Lithuanian is a pretty. That would be.
Not even a chatbot. We don't have any like talk system in Lithuania. I don't know.
You need somebody to build the language library. Yeah. Because the infrastructure is you can copy. You can take the infrastructure that's been built for any language, but then you need to constantly have the components of this language relative. And there's just a lot more. So if you think about how they build those systems, there's a lot more natural language representations out there of English, French, German, Spanish, right? Chinese, right? I mean, there's what, 3 million people there?
Yeah,
So it's just that, you know, the data. What's the data set gonna look like from in?
No, when we look at the market, it's not logical, but like when you think about the old people who could use that.
No. It can still be done, but it's just somebody has to. Somebody has to. It could be. I would say the legal language is trickier. Just regular language.
Yes,
It's way easier.
Yeah.
That's why, like, the Google Assistant is much simpler than. It'd be different things. Understand these teams.
Žinok, negaliu pasakyti. Galim šiaip visas pakeisti, jeigu yra laisvų.
Or a common way. Yeah, it'll get there, but. Okay. Thank you. All right. No.
You're coming to the chat box. Lithuanian chat box, right? Yeah, exactly.
It's going back.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the only way here, I guess.
Later on, the development of such technology will show down. So local players are just going to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, please take your seat. Thank you.
I think Daniel may be...
Daniel, if you want to be here, right?
The center, yeah.
Gonna get. You guys are gonna. This is. It's a large panel there.
We have a microphone here, okay.
Yeah, we just shared the microphone.
All right. Welcome all to the second expert panel discussion. Thank you for your patience and for waiting till the last discussion. Now, as we have puzzled out the concept of legal tech and its practical implementation, we will continue to discuss the idea of Vilnius LegalTech Centre, or let's say the place where legal tech solutions would be born and developed. But before introducing the panelists, I'd like to get a better picture of the audience and would like to ask how many IT specialists are we having at the moment? All right, yes. And also, exactly, Professor Antanas Činis. Okay, so we have a couple of IT professionals. What about law practitioners?
Let's agree on the terms. What does it mean,
Yes.
IT professional?
Okay, maybe we can keep the concepts for later now. Let's say technologists and non-lawyers. How would you describe yourself? Okay, so lawyers, law practitioners, probably the majority, right? Including also me. Okay, and others? Do we have people from other disciplines? So please, could you tell your discipline? In the front, yes.
First of all, I'm business owner.
All right.
That means everything.
All right, yes. What kind of business?
Consulting, innovation,
Okay.
management, and few startups.
Okay, so it's related to technologies in any way, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and academics? Also, yes, we have many here. Okay, so now as we got the picture, I think the lawyers is a majority, and well, IT professionals, as always, probably we have a lack of them, but I'm sure they are, yes, I'm sure they are watching online, many of them. So, okay, and now I would like to introduce myself once again. My name is Virgilijus Pajaujis. I'm a project manager at Great Lithuania program, which is a one-year rotation professionals-based program launched by Invest Lithuania. And by the way, I encourage you all to participate at the application process, which is happening right now till the 20th of May. Coming back to our discussion, I would like to introduce the experts on the floor. Sitting left from me, once again, Professor Daniel Katz from the United States. We also have Mr. Lukas Keraitis, who's an investment advisor for business services at Invest Lithuania, and he also contributes a lot, especially to legal processes outsourcing and to the companies who expand here in Lithuania. We also have associated professor from Vilnius University Faculty of Law and a partner of Cobalt Law Firm, Mr. Šimašius. And I have to mention that he's also the main organizer of the first LegalTech hackathon in the Baltic states, which happened quite recently. And to the left, we have Martinas Mockus, who's the head of LegalTech at Mykolas Romeris University, Faculty of Law. He also gained his PhD, as Professor Lyra mentioned, in LegalTech, and one of the leading programs in Europe. And I'm also glad to present Professor Habilitated Dr. Antanas Čenys, who's a Vice Rector for Research and Innovations at Vilnius Gediminas Technical University. And so we have some variety, not only lawyers, but also technologists and IT professionals here. Within the next hour, we will hear about the legal tech spaces abroad, influences on investments, potential activities and target groups of the future Vilnius LegalTech Centre, and a recent LegalTech hackathon. I will kindly ask every speaker to give a speech on about 5 to 7 minutes, as we have to strictly end up our discussion and the conference at 1 p.m. And after the presentations, we will have around 20 minutes for discussions, and I would like to encourage once again all of you to actively enroll in the discussion and create the LegalTech Centre together. I have honor to introduce once again Professor Daniel Katz. Professor Daniel Katz, and
already said a lot. Maybe I'll defer and hear what other people have to say.
All right.
Could I defer and go last?
All right. Okay, so we'll have Professor Daniel the last one, and then Mr. Lukas Keraitis from Invest Lithuania. He will speak about legal tech foreign investments and, well, the potential for Vilnius LegalTech Centre, and how can influence, let's say, the investments.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm so happy that we're having these discussions finally in Lithuania, in Vilnius, and I work for Invest Lithuania, so basically we're a governmental agency just under the Ministry of Economy. So our main task is to attract foreign direct investment. We work with 3 streams, but the main is business services. So you see Danske Bank, you see SEB, you see Barclays, Western Union. So probably these are our clients that we work with and help to attract Lithuania. By doing that, we also thought that it makes sense to have a value proposition for legal companies to set up shop here as well. So you look at our shared service industry, you have around 10% that are already performing legal services globally. So that means that people working in NASDAQ, in Danske Bank, in Citco, they are already working with different jurisdictions doing law from Vilnius. So I think our goal is to increase that number. And by talking to companies traveling abroad, this is where I met Daniel as well, it's just that we hear that more and more it's not all about legal people or legal talent. It's more about, is the location suitable to support technology? And our job is to tackle where Daniel mentioned in his presentation, the LPO market and the LPO industry. So if you look at various reports from Reuters or Grand Search Review, you will see that the LPO market is being increasing heavily, and it is projected to be a bigger chunk, essentially taking more jobs from law firms. So essentially, we want to be in that game. We want to put Lithuania on the map on that game, and we want our legal talent to have the chance and opportunity to work internationally. So if you look at Vilnius, a lot of finance students, IT students has the opportunity to go and work with global markets, work with global projects. Legal and law students don't have that opportunity. So essentially, we thought that we need to develop that, and as an organization, we not only attract foreign direct investment, but we work heavily with education institutions to help to create the environment and improve the investment environment, essentially, for companies to come in. So technology is impacting the industry heavily, and international companies are seeing that. And my goal here is just to encourage our local communities to think about that and adapt to the new challenges that are being present. And, you know, startups, you can touch upon startups, but we have legal tech companies already here in Lithuania that are doing AI solutions. You know, you have 5 guys sitting working in New York, Australia, doing projects here. It's just, you know, we have the capable talent that are doing legal stuff already for big corporations outside of Lithuania. So why not get some, you know, law companies, law firms, LPO providers that are in need of technology, lawyers, languages, and, you know, Lithuania has everything to offer, and we have the experience of building Barclays centers, Western Unions. Why not build legal organizations here as well? So this is essentially what our agenda are, and hopefully I'm, again, very thankful for the municipality, Mykolas Romeris University, and Create for Lithuania guys to put in this all together. And we talked earlier that, you know, we have 20, 30 people this time year round, but maybe in 5 years we're going to have 200, 300 people gathering and talking about this more and more, since it's going to impact the industry a bit bigger, and I think our local community should adapt to that as well. Yep. Okay,
yeah, thank you. At my opening speech, I mentioned Hierarchis, which is an IT company from Netherlands. Yeah. Maybe you could elaborate.
Yeah, I forgot about it. So it was a recent investment. So the company works with Hierarchis, is a Dutch company. They do document management work for 90% of the finance sector in the Netherlands and Benelux. So what they essentially did is they set up shop not in Vilnius but in Kaunas. They're starting to recruit, and their main goal is to support their sales, marketing, and of course tech development. So when I met with the owner of the company, he said he's also interested to penetrate the Nordic and Baltic states. So what essentially that means is that he's going to start developing products that are going to be offered for the local market. So, you know, big financial organizations in Lithuania may use their product, and, you know, we're talking about cost efficiencies once again, and a bigger portion of the market, legal market, is going to be coming to, going to be developed and taken away by these type of companies. So it's the first move. It's a legal tech company. Yeah, so yeah, I think it's a good case study to work on, and they're really happy and excited to work with the initiative that is going to be developed, you know, Vilnius Tech or LegalTech Centre, whatever it's going to be called. But they're really on to working with universities and being part of the community as well. So I think it's a good addition to our FDI generally, but in terms of legal sector, it's also a good push.
Can we say that such a center, a legal tech center, let's say, would encourage more investors to open the offices here in Lithuania, in Vilnius?
Yeah, again, I think when a company is choosing a location, if you take a finance company, IT company, they don't necessarily just look, you know, to talent, cost, and, you know, office space, but they also like to, where Lithuania always wins in attracting, you know, big corporations such as Barclays or NASDAQ, you know, they could get gone on anywhere, but why they come here is just they get immense support from the local community, where they cannot get, for example, maybe in Poland or Hungary. So Lithuanian government is really open to communicate with them, see the problems, develop solutions. So I think this is our advantage, and such centers could be a good, you know, for them location to, well, maybe we're considering to relocate some e-discovery work done in German, you know, French. In addition, in the future, maybe we would like to shift our software development here as well. So this is a good location to do that, because people already understands the technologies, the legal tech environment, and so on. So I think it's really important to have that, and it's a good selling point. Of course, to be honest, nobody really knows a lot about Lithuania, so it's just a good marketing point as well.
Okay, thank you, Lukas. And if you have any questions, please keep them later on. And just write, not to forget. And next in line, we have Dr. Martinas Mockus from Mykolas Romeris University. He will have some slides to show. And Martinas Mockus will present the potential functions of Vilnius LegalTech Centre.
I have a few slides only, because actually I'm a fan of crowdsourcing. I believe that all of you came here, you are very interested in Vilnius LegalTech Centre, and together we can build from bottom to up what maybe we will have in the next near future. So first I will introduce you those few slides, and I hope that during the questions session maybe we can discuss about possible stakeholders of Vilnius LegalTech Centre, or even about functions. So first, let's check what is ecosystem related a bit to legal tech. So we can start from research and higher education institutions, from which I came here. So there are few universities working in this area. Others universities, they work in information technologies, in computer science field, in artificial intelligence. So only those are not now focused to legal tech, but maybe in the next future we can focus there. Then we have government and legal institutions, which actually now more and more are involved in legal field. Let's check only ODR, so online dispute resolution. Now European Commission is trying to remove the borders to create a digital single market, and ODR is technology, a tool which can just give us possibility to have this single market. So this is how it's changing the environment, how we live there. We have also institutions like Invest in Lithuania, Go Vilnius, Great for Lithuania. We have other like legal institutions like courts, police, even government. She's interesting in developing, let's say, GovTech technologies. So if we go to development, we have also some representatives here. Like Tomas already is working quite long ago in legal tech field. We have companies, startups in which is related to artificial intelligence. On other hand, we have startups phenomena, which is quite rising now in Lithuania. We have a lot of tech parks. So Sapiegos Technical Park is that park is like probably now is most significant in startups field. Then we have small medium enterprise, so called legal companies, advocates. We have other companies which provide services for other industries. So there could be possibility for legal tech. We also have active citizens, which are very involved in open data, in GovTech, in HackTech. We have NGOs which are trying to find corruption cases, and they are trying to promote openness, to promote data market. We have industry, which can, let's say, could be the main payer to legal tech developers. So we have, for example, telecommunication companies, as already there was Pakutinskas presenting this industry. That we have aviation, autonomous vehicles, even there are quite a big discussion about ethical weapons, and if we talk about in the future Robocop, or maybe guns, can they shoot to civilians or not? So also there are debates. So actually, because we have a lot of people from different areas, so maybe you could think how you could engage with Vilnius LegalTech Centre. So maybe you see yourself as stakeholder, because still the call is open for this. And another thing, what I would like you to think, how specialized or how broad should be that center, because of course Lithuania is quite a small country, and when we need lawyers and computer scientists, or even one person and having those two competencies, so we don't have such big amount of people who would like to work in this specific and very challenging area. So are we talking only about legal tech, and still legal tech is discussable? So the list is really long and not the full here. Also, we have other fields like cybersecurity. Without cybersecurity, we cannot develop legal tech. How can we trust like Robocop or even those insurance bots? Maybe we can just make some fraud, or just go on the sensor and put some rain water, or just break to the system of weather company. What's about GDPR, privacy, big data analysis? Should it be included inside? Of course, it's a part of legal tech, but from that perspective of privacy, what's about biotech technologies, e-health, mobile health, care robots? If the care robot will act not as the person would like to, but maybe the doctor recommends to do for the person, but person doesn't want. What's about those things? What's about hackers who can break to those robots? About Terminator ethics, so it's about autonomous weapon systems. Should it be some, let's say, technology implemented which, let's say, can prevent some damage to civilians? Nanotech, new technology regulation, is this field a part of? Space tech, Mars tech, yeah, we are going to Mars now. So maybe we should discuss also there, because those competencies, law and computer science, are important also here. All autonomous system, fintech, okay, blockchain. So it started with, we known the best from the fintech field, blockchain, but blockchain now is very used in legal tech.
Okay, Martin, I'm afraid that the time has passed now, and
yeah, and the last remark. Okay. So the last remark, which is very important in Lithuania, if we talk about open data projects, because there is from citizens and from government a will to have institution which could be responsible for open government projects. So maybe it could be a part of LegalTech, Vilnius LegalTech Centre also. So thank you. So please think about that, and we can discuss after.
Okay, thank you, Martin. So from your presentation, well, we see clearly that we have quite a broad infrastructure, right? And many target groups that could participate in the LegalTech Centre. Also, you covered some of the topics as ODR or GovTech. What do you think about the exact activities in such a center? Just to give some examples, hackathons, some research, let's say, activities, or what would you think about the activities?
Yeah, it's a good question. As Daniel marked that startups are the fuel in general. Yeah, the startups are the main fuel for legal tech industry, because all those brilliant ideas, they are raised in those startups, but not in. Thank you. But not in old legal companies. So this is a good question. Another question is, should it look for foreign markets, or should it invest to Lithuania role? So we have to discuss. Should it connect researchers or universities to, let's say, small and medium enterprises, maybe to development companies? What's about student education? Maybe some practice of student could be done in this center, or maybe that center could just coordinate and to show direction to that student, and so on.
Okay, coming back to foreign markets, I would like to ask Lukas Keraitis once again, do you think we could be competitive, let's say, and propose some products or services abroad to foreign markets?
You just don't need to look very far. I mean, fintech, when you go to London, New York, Lithuania is well known there for fintech, just because of ease of regulation, business environment, and we have historically, we attracted a lot of financial organizations. That's why you have the talent that is able to provide those solutions and develop new ones. So it's a chicken and egg sort of problem. You have to get more companies here so they get the talent. If you have the talent, the companies come here. So it's a bit of both of this and that, but I'm sure we are. I mean, we have the technical skills, and come on, we got lawyers. We have them. Previously, the last decade was, we were a humanitarian country, more or less. Business administration, law, finance, but now we see a trend that the most popular educational program for high school graduates for 2 years in a row is in actually IT programming systems. So we are becoming a shift. So we're going to have that legal knowledge, but also we can top on that and the technology as well. So I think sure.
Okay. Okay, so I would like to ask now for Professor Habilitated Dr. Antanas Činys, who will talk about IT and legal tech, probably more from technological point of view, and about developing cross-discipline technology products as part of Vilnius LegalTech Centre. Please.
Okay, if you will allow me, I will skip my presentation, what I prepared, because if we are speaking about LegalTech Centre, let's put it frankly. Yeah, we have some trouble here. This is obvious. The audience sitting here is very small, and this is lawyers. And if you want to have a legal tech center, something like, I think you have done a great job, and I hope so, that after 2 years or 3 years, you will be not in this room. It will be some conference hall with a lot of people. But it's clear that we should...
Litexpo, maybe.
Yeah, maybe, but it is clear that we should, because we have everything here. We have a top speaker from the world. Yeah, we cannot get better, as far as I know. This is not a compliment.
Okay, I paid him money before.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I am not a lawyer and not even a politician, so I should not be correct, or legally or politically. I don't care about that. For me, it's no problem. And I am going to retire after some time, so I am a especially rude person. Yeah. Yeah, but that's true. I can tell you that if your talk would be announced at a blockchain center in Vilnius, you would have audience, some 300 people. For sure. So what I mean that at the moment, It's very simple. We have a hype for fintech and blockchain, and we are having it, and so that's a fact of life. And when we are trying, we are trying to establish LegalTech Centre, I can tell you immediately that we all will need to compete for IT people. Yeah? And IT, everybody, every week, I am having some foreign companies coming to our university. Invest Lithuania is providing them to us, and I am hearing the same question always. How many talent in IT do you have? Okay, that's fine. We are having a lot of IT students, but we are listening to, I don't know, we are not listening to TV. Most probably we are looking in Facebook, or I don't know what, Twitter, whatsoever. But what we are listening that during last year, it was, I think, 35 new fintech companies in Lithuania, 35, and making around $500 million in ICOs. Are you ready to compete with that?
Can I jump in? Yeah, you shouldn't retire. You know the data really well. You should keep on going. So, yeah. But yeah, I think precisely right. I think this is more for a technology, technical university, or like you need technical people to participate in these type of events. I mean, legal is just a part of this, but solutions are going to be developed by tech people. So the merge of two disciplines is really necessary.
I know the story. We have the same story, and I am sure we are merging to, I hope so, we are merging with Romeris University, and we will have the law and technology under the same roof, as you was telling, and I think it will be great. But we are now having finances and technology under the same roof, and this is fintech. And now my question is, who is running fintech startups? IT people? No. No? Because typically for fintech startups and fintech companies, the IT solutions are quite simple. Okay, I am not saying that this is trivial, but it is not that complicated. It sounds a very clever smart contract, but for any person doing software, smart contract is easy unless you are going for legal issues and unless you are going for bugs and mistakes and the costs. You mentioned DAO, yeah? It was a mistake in smart contracting. Yeah. And it costed 150 million, I'm correct? Something like, okay, maybe less.
Let's stab among friends.
Yeah. So, but what I mean, that we need to try to find some buzz for the thing. Because we have two paths. Or we are doing legal tech for Lithuanian legal system. This is slow, sure, and this is important and needed path. Everybody is going that. Lithuanian Railways has announced that they will do Internet of Things. Just, I know, 1 month ago. And that is technology is going everywhere. But that will be slow process. If we want to have something like startups, we should have our students excited. And so we should find a way. Maybe we should hijack fintech. Maybe we should say that you will be able to evaluate legally smart contracts or whatsoever. I don't know what. This is not a question for me. But if we really want some boom in legal tech, because we will need to compete for talent. That is unavoidable. So, and for this sense, I think that I want 300 people in this conference in 2 years. It doesn't matter how. It's just another question.
We will have them. Thank you. Once again, I think you touched upon a very special issue, the IT specialists. And yeah. I want to come back again and maybe ask the audience to think, as we have a couple of IT professionals here, how could we attract IT specialists for this LegalTech Center? What motivates them? What does motivate them?
Two
then?
things as always, as everywhere.
I can guess one.
One is clear, yeah, I will not say it. And second, it should be exciting, because the money will start to be not so important after some level. It's fine to have money, but the money just buys something. It's not everything. If you have excitement, if you have a perspective, if you have a fun, yeah, that sells. I think that fintech, especially cryptocurrencies, it sells because it's so exciting. You are creating new world. Nobody knows which one, but you are thinking that you are doing new world. And everybody, young people, they want to participate in that. If you are just improving 5% contract writing, you should pay very well for me to do that. It's not interesting. So I mean for these youngsters in IT, and they are this kind. So we should make something really sexy.
Okay, we have a question. Tauras Pėstininkas. Yes, please.
Really, we are in our companies. We are really fighting for IT people, but for Lithuania, I see the opportunity not IT people, IT talents for now, but I think legal talents. I was touched by talk of our major that said very simple thing, that we have in Lithuania overproduction of high qualified legal people. And that's really true. And, but we have the problem. They all of them are trained just for local market. And that's the biggest our, let's say, limitation and also opportunity at the same time. If we just retrain them for global market, we can open our doors and market. Because for my experience, when we have the same IQ and same education of, let's say, IT guy or legal guy, for IT guy, we pay at least twice. That's a difference. That's our opportunity. I think our opportunity is just legal talents.
And I want to mention, thank you, Tauras, that we have new courses emerging, and one of them, common law course, right? Maybe Professor Lyra Jakulevičienė could elaborate more on that. So we have new courses starting that are specializing on the global market, not only on the local level. And I think we will have more of these.
Maybe just one word. Indeed, I don't agree with the mayor, and this is what I also told to him about overproduction, because the numbers of graduates are very small. If you compare with the, like 10 years ago, it was like massive production of lawyers, but right now we have very, very small numbers, and they are decreasing. So that's also the reason why we are bringing students now from Ukraine, because there are very few students who want to study law nowadays. So it becomes also a problem, because it has been in the public, law has been marketed, not by us, not by law schools, but by the others, as something not very perspective, you know? That we are now talking about IT and technological sciences that actually create jobs. But in fact, this has a very big negative influence on students wanting to study law. So that's actually, I think we also have trouble with that. But coming back to what you very rightly pointed out about whether our education is for local market or for the global one, I would say at our university we have been developing programs also before where we focus not only on the Lithuanian market, in particular the master programs that we have with France and with some other countries. But right now, just on Monday, we are actually launching the special course for on common law, we have been teaching common law before, but it was like part of the like extra course for students. But we are also aim to increasingly engage also the practitioners in the law companies, because we see that law companies, they actually serve also the clients from common law system. And so far, none of the law schools has been actually preparing graduates in common law. So we have some of them who have studied in other countries, and we have some competencies. But indeed, this is the area that we have to explore. And as Lukas says, that it's like half of the world's legal market is in the US and UK, and this is the common law system. So this is also a chance for us. So we can talk about legal tech, but also we have lots of opportunities to actually invest in education in common law. Because of globalization, everything is merging. So that's, yeah, we are trying to do that. We are also struggling with that. The list for the course, participants of the course, is not that broad as we expected, but somebody has to start somewhere.
Yeah, I think topping on that, on the program-wise, is important because when I talk with big LPO providers, law firms in US, UK, they say the main point that why they would be hesitant to shift some legal operations is just because the common law system, and you don't have experience in that. Usually companies go to India, Philippines, and Asia locations just because they have the same legal system, but what they don't have is language capabilities. And GDPR is going to have a big effect now, where regulation is going to be in place. So a lot of legal work will be necessary there for legal companies. So I think this is a good initiative. And war on talent, IT people, it's not only Lithuania. It's you wouldn't find a city globally that it says like, hey, we got IT specialists here lying down and they don't have nothing to do. The war on talent for IT people is global. So companies, hierarchies came here not because of prices. They said, we're coming because you have people. That's it. In the Netherlands, they can't find the people to study. So again, when we're going to increase scale up, education programs, of course they have to be quality. This is what we're known for quality. So I think the war on talent is global. So where sort of your organizations are competing with London, Scandinavian regions, etc. So it's a global game.
I think just one thing. I think if you at least solve this common law problem, the jobs will follow, and then you'll have plenty of people who want to do it. I think somebody has to take the leap of faith and sort of say, look, I think it's an investment, so you try to say, look, I think there's a reasonable prospect of this working out, but it's just like the way we said in this room, as these things scale up, then people say, oh yeah, I do legal tech also. This is sort of, but somebody has to go first in every market and take a bit of a leap of faith. So credit to you for doing that. And I think, we've been involved in conversations where this is very much, it's not like sending the job to India is more, it'd be better to send it here, and 100 times out of 100, but it's because this common law piece is a serious one, a serious barrier. But I think you solve for that, and you're in the game, as you said.
So time is passing by very quick, and I have to give a floor to Rimantas Šimašius, who will present the experiences of LegalTech Hackathon, which, as I told you, was the first this kind of initiative in the Baltic states. And maybe Rimantas could tell the plans for the future. Who knows, maybe one day this hackathon could be a part of global legal hackathon. So please, Rimantas.
Thanks a lot. Yes, here I'm sitting with two hats. One of them is I'm partner at Global Legal, which is one of the largest law firm network in the region, in the Baltics and Belarus. So we are one of the leaders, and we're interested to change. We're interested to change ourselves, to disrupt the market a little bit, and to hunt for legal talent as well for IT solutions. And we recognize that we'll have to change our patterns of businesses. We'll have to adopt, because clients globally and in our markets as well asking for the same, more for less, at the same quality. maybe even better quality. So somehow we have to provide it, and LegalTech solutions are the solutions we're looking forward, and we are applying in our work. We do automate our case management, we do automate our document management, etc., and we are looking forward to better ways how to operate in the market. Yes, having current level of development of various tools which are available, and knowing language barriers, which are very acute in our markets, we are looking forward to some boxes which might be used in our markets as well. But we are ready to experiment. Why? Because we understand that if we need a solution, so most probably these solutions should be tailor-made. Some solutions might be open, might be offered to us, but yes, we're playing with some IE tools for M&A, for e-discovery as well. And we value it the more when these solutions are open to our languages, which are quite exotic to these tools. And speaking about potential, I'd say not much of our competitors here in this market are very much interested in going into depth with this. Yes, we're fascinated, but not with very much detail. Still, we think that we would like to be the part of it, just because we understand what's the reason, what's the philosophy behind it, and by the way, we have a group of people and think tank of people who understand how to change everything. And that's one thing. So we want to change a little bit the market, we want to make these changes, and we understand that going global or scaling globally might be our chance as well. Speaking about what specialists and legal minds do you need for legal tech, that's for sure. You do need not only academicians, not only students, not only minds who might be interested in serving as paralegal for common law systems. If you would like to make any change, you need legal minds who change business here and who are the best experts in changing legal processes. So we know how to do, and we have in our team these people as well. So if you need that these legal tech centers or legal tech hubs would create any substantial change, you definitely need these people, and you need to attract such players and as large law firms. By the way, we're quite large here, but we're not at the scale of global law firms. And this is also opportunity. We're ready to engage in various experimental games. We have our sandbox as well, and LegalTech Hackathon was the first step to open the sandbox. So we have in the sandbox 2 teams who experiment with various ideas which might be useful for upgrading of our businesses and our business solutions. And we realized that if these teams would succeed, most probably some of these ideas might go scaling on global scale as well. So we have lots of things here that might be interested and might be used and might be a blocks for possible success of these legal tech initiatives. One of this is we're quite small, but we are, as Lithuania, we're quite small, but we're enthusiastic. We know how to do things. We know how to change. And we are ready to change our processes with government support. We did that many times. For example, electronic e-justice system, Lithuanian court retrieval system. So what we did already, if compared to some other applications or use cases, we compare abroad. So that's something, you know. And definitely, this does not work very well because, well, of lack of finances, etc. But if you compare to other use cases abroad, so it's something. And in order to do that, we needed not only not only IT specialists, but as well legal specialists and experts. And we needed support from government, from courts to engage into these type of activities. Later on, we needed support from legal community to engage in, well, operating the system from another end, from lawyer's end. And currently, after 5 years of launching, opening this system and then launching additional functionalities in 2013, No Lithuanian advocate can imagine that he could operate without entering the system, without exchange of electronic documents and that stuff. And I think what we have lots of goals for the future, lots of information, which might be open, if our government and if our initiatives would create good opportunities, having in mind GDPR, by the way, to use this gold for benefit and for playing and testing various tools, such as IE tools as well, and then scaling it globally. So it's possible to do. Second hat, Vilnius University Faculty of Law and Faculty of Math and Informatics is also very much interested in developing various initiatives and innovations. They are as well changing their programs. We are actively developing various new programs and new tools. And one of the examples, last week we had an international conference of doctoral students with participation of 40 bright minds from 20 countries, speaking just about digitalization of law, or law 2.0. So bright presentations, a lot of interesting ideas connected with legal tech and all that technical stuff, which is changing the play. As well, more questions, and this was very inspiring for our academicians, and we see that these processes are going forward. We receive more and more students who are interested in these subjects and who are ready to participate in various innovation initiatives. So that's why, I believe all Lithuanian law schools are interested in developing some sort of cooperation with informatics specialists and mathematicians and then some other specialists. And we're going to participate in various initiatives, and that's going to happen. If you would be able to create certain ecosystem which would host all these initiatives and consolidate these initiatives, that would be beneficial, I believe, for everybody of us. Basically, this is it.
Thank you, Rimantas. I also wanted to ask you, what do you think, how could the law firms such as Cobalt Law Firm, how could they contribute to the center's activities, let's say, just to give a couple of examples, and vice versa, what exactly the center could propose to the law firms, let's say?
Yes, there are a variety of fields where these type of hubs might cooperate and we could feel added value, and these hubs could feel added value. From particular example, we are a party and a participant of ecosystem of Vilnius Tech Parks, Sapiegos Park, from the very beginning. So we help to solve all legal issues while establishing. We help to solve them all the legal issues which is which they face in their work for the hub. For the startups, we help to grow these startups, providing full-scale legal service for the legal startup, for various startups, including fintech. Well, fintech blockchain is on the way, so that's why we're very much interested, and we created even a task force to help these startups to grow and to escape various legal traps and how to solve legal traps where we run into issues, because we do run into issues, and issues sometimes of scale of lots of money. So, well, we know how it works, we know how to settle it, and we know the patterns of their works, and with this expertise, I believe you could create a better working environment and better working ecosystem. Speaking directly about legal tech and applications, I believe you do need professionals, law professionals, who could form a core of your legal tech think tank, just because to understand, just to understand how to transform legal practice and experiment and play. Because, you should not, push law firms or let's say, conservative law in the boundaries of it and say we're going to do something new and we're going to swap them up off the market, etc. If you do that, most probably there will be resistance and most probably you're not going to succeed. If you want to change anything, I believe you have to include them and you have to learn from that, from them, and law businesses, law firms, networks, they not only feel the competition, but they also feel the possibility to transform and to be a significant players in the future legal market. So I believe that's what LegalTech centers, that particular hub, could offer to law firms that would be interested to cooperate and to do some things for low cost or some things for free, or just exchanging certain benefits and values and utilities.
I'm really glad to hear about the existing initiatives that actually could be united in such a center as Vilnius LegalTech Centre. And now I would also like to ask Professor Daniel Katz
I've listened to everything everyone had to say.
Yes. To share maybe what would be do's and don'ts while establishing such a center, and let's say how it could...
Let's just put the center to the side for 1 second, if I could. And I sort of want to thread this conversation a little bit together around, there's these different types of roles in this type of work. So there's a sort of, if this was all just a pure IT play, then it would already be done. And if it was all the lawyers doing it themselves, this would also already been done. You know, they presumably do it themselves. There's a kind of a concept of like what's called a legal solutions architect, which is some person who's like, I don't know, half man, half beast or something like this. But and that's the role. That's an important role, both to do any of this stuff domestically or globally. This LSA role is a person who has sufficient technical knowledge and sufficient domain knowledge or substantive legal expertise in order to be able to translate between the two. And I think that's like for a law school, that's probably as far as you could take it. Rather, you can't turn somebody into a full-fledged IT person, but you can get them to this LSA role. That's like what we've done at my school, is generated, and there's other schools in the U.S. that have sort of created people that are kind of in that mold. And that doesn't mean that you wouldn't need a proper development team, or there are people who have more deep subject matter expertise, but you know, you can't, if you have all of one or all of the other in a group, it's generally not going to work. I mean, I've seen and advised many companies that were full of only technical people, and they were picking the wrong problems to work on. And I saw kind of lawyers trying to build their own tech with no substantive or technical knowledge, and that doesn't work very well either. So, you know, there has to be some sort of perhaps an arranged marriage, I don't know, but it needs to be, you know, sorted out, I think. So I think some of the ecosystem, as I would think of it, is one is to just help facilitate those connections between people who have the general notion that they want to work in this space. And I do think some of the impulses people have around blockchain is actually some of the impulses they would have around this. And if they knew about it, they would say, oh, that's interesting too. And there is a chance to really, beyond the money, to be able to do something impactful. And so I think, obviously, we can learn from some other sectors who've been able to make the use cases exciting enough to create the hype to get people to do the hard part, which is learn the technical knowledge or grind through the hard part of having a company or what have you. So I see that as a goal for the center, and I think the academy needs to be part of it, but that has to be handled in a controlled manner, because you'll get every person who has a policy prescription for how technology ought to be regulated involved in this particular enterprise, which won't really work very well. This has to be, you ought to do your best to put that at some level. In other words, there's not going to be any foreign direct investment interested in what some law professor thinks about GDPR. You know, that's fine, but that's not going to change the price of fish. So it needs to be focused on operational excellence, it seems to me, if it's going to have a practical business case. I personally would start global and then turn back to local. I think if you build a cadre of people and let's say they're working globally, they're the people ultimately who will be best positioned to turn locally and take those same ideas that they've learned about globally and deploy them into practical problems here within the country, it seems to me. Those are just some of my thoughts. And they need to develop legal context so that they can build a startup that actually solves a problem, a real problem for a real person or entity, what have you. That's why this legal solutions architect, I think, is this kind of divider between the two worlds that can kind of bridge. And again, this is not an unheard of idea in other sectors of the economy. There are people that are kind of translators or between the two domains. So those are some thoughts I had. We're running up against the time.
Yes, just one last question that I would have. Would you rather see this center as a hybrid model, let's say, unity between academy and businesses, or because we have a couple of examples and we have different models. We have academic model, let's say Helsinki LegalTech Lab, which is more research-based. We have...
No, it needs to be business-based. You'll be researching the wrong problems. This is what will end up happening. But it has to be anchored to some reality. And I think generally you'll get sucked into these problems that really don't matter. And there's other problems that really do matter and are material, and so you have an opportunity to... there has to be involvement. It doesn't need to be a pure commercial operation at the one hand, but at the other hand, it cannot be just people allowed to do whatever they want to with no relationship to like helping position the country for real success in this area. Then it has to be related to a market. That would be my advice. Now somebody has to referee the boundaries there. So good luck to that person. But maybe it's you.
We should now leave our place for our manager.
Oh.
Sure. Okay. Just a few more minutes, please.
Is there a hearing here?
A few.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Very good.
Okay. So I would like to thank you all of the experts at the panel discussion, the audience for being here at the very first LegalTech conference. And I hope we will continue our discussions after the conference, and probably we'll see you next year in a similar conference, with much more participants. Thank you once more. And Lyra, would you like to add something for closing? Okay, thank you, and see you in further events.